Jealous ex claimed I was cheating and faked a pregnancy to trap me, but it turns out that she was actually the one cheating and the baby wasn't mine. At 28, navigating significant drama has unfortunately become a recent theme in my life. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, a pseudonym, and I ended our tumultuous 2-year relationship a few months ago after discovering some shocking truths. Sarah and I first crossed paths at a party through mutual friends and quickly clicked. The first year of our relationship was idyllic. We shared similar interests, loved spending time together, and even talked about our future. I'm a software engineer, while Sarah works as a graphic designer. Despite our demanding careers, we made time for each other, enjoying spontaneous weekend getaways, trying new restaurants, and binge-watching TV shows on lazy Sundays. We introduced each other to our families, and everything seemed perfect. But over time, things started to unravel. Initially, Sarah voiced concerns about how much time I spent at work and my close friendships with certain women. I brushed these off as normal relationship issues, but her jealousy and possessiveness soon escalated. She became increasingly upset if I spent time with female friends, even in group settings, and began scrutinizing my phone and questioning every text or call I received. One memorable incident involved dinner with my best friend Mike and his girlfriend while Sarah canceled due to work. That night, Sarah called me in tears, accusing me of lying about my whereabouts after seeing a Snapchat story from a mutual friend who was at the same restaurant. It took hours to calm her down and prove my innocence. Things deteriorated further when I began a major project at work, which required extra hours and late nights. Sarah had a hard time dealing with this, frequently calling me during the day, showing up at my office unannounced, and even following me to catch me in the act. Despite my reassurances, introducing her to my coworkers, sharing my location, and contemplating quitting the project, nothing seemed to ease her anxiety. The constant accusations and lack of trust were exhausting. The breaking point came when Sarah accused me of cheating with a coworker named Emily. After seeing work-related texts between Emily and me, Sarah completely lost it. One evening, she showed up at my office while Emily and I were working on a presentation. Bursting into the conference room, she screamed and cried, accusing Emily of trying to steal me away and hurling insults. Despite my efforts to calm her, she became hysterical, threw a potted plant, which missed me, and security had to escort her out. Emily was understandably shaken, and the next day, I had to explain the situation to my boss. He was sympathetic but warned me that such incidents couldn't happen again. Although Emily remained professional, the atmosphere became awkward between us, and some colleagues began treating me as if I were the guy with the crazy ex-girlfriend. After the incident, it became evident that our relationship couldn't continue. I took a day off work and went to Sarah's apartment to end things. I explained that her constant mistrust and accusations had become unbearable, affecting not just our relationship but also my work and friendships. Sarah didn't handle it well. The conversation quickly devolved into yelling, crying and name-calling. She accused me of never loving her, using her, and cheating throughout our relationship. In the heat of the moment, she even threw some of my belongings out of her apartment window. It was a chaotic scene. As I was leaving, she threatened to ruin my life and make me pay for breaking her heart. At the time, I dismissed it as an emotional outburst, feeling relieved to be free from the relationship. In the weeks that followed, Sarah kept trying to reach me, calling, texting, and even showing up at places she knew I frequented. Her messages ranged from begging for another chance to threatening to expose me as a cheater. I blocked her number on all social media platforms, and eventually, she seemed to get the hint and backed off. I spent the next few weeks focusing on getting my life back on track. Immersing myself in work, hitting the gym more often, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my time with Sarah. Things started to feel normal again. Then, last week, while enjoying a quiet Friday evening at home, Sarah unexpectedly showed up at my door. She looked pale and exhausted. Before I could react, she blurted out that she was pregnant and that the baby was mine. Stunned and disbelieving, I struggled to process the news. We had always been careful, and given how our relationship had ended, I wondered if this was a scheme to win me back. Sarah claimed she was about 2 months pregnant, which coincided with the period when our relationship was falling apart. I invited her in, more out of shock than anything else. We sat in my living room, where she explained that she had missed her period, taken a home test, and confirmed it with a doctor. I told her I needed time to process this and offered her a glass of water before retreating to the kitchen to clear my head. When I returned, I found her going through my phone, which I had left on the coffee table. I confronted her, and she claimed she was just checking the time, but it felt like a breach of trust I had grown accustomed to. I told her that before I could accept what she was saying, I needed concrete proof, such as a paternity test. Sarah was upset and accused me of not trusting her, which felt ironic given our history. She pleaded for me to believe her, but all I could think about were the times she had accused me of lying and cheating. I insisted on a paternity test and medical proof of the pregnancy. Sarah grew angry, hurling insults and accusing me of cowardice for not taking responsibility. She threatened to tell our mutual friends and my family that I was abandoning her and the child. Then she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Since then, I've been a wreck. I can't concentrate at work. I'm struggling with sleep, and I feel constantly on edge. I question whether I'm being too harsh. What if she really is pregnant? Yet another part of me wonders if this is a manipulation tactic. I've spent hours researching false pregnancy claims and paternity rights. Although I've considered reaching out to Sarah, I remember how toxic our relationship had become and how much happier I've been since the breakup. I haven't shared this with anyone, neither my family nor my best friend Mike. I'm unsure of what to do. Am I wrong for not believing her and demanding proof? Should I have handled the situation differently? I keep replaying the conversation in my mind, wondering if I missed something. Sarah did look different, tired and stressed, but could it simply be from the aftermath of our breakup? And why wait 2 months to tell me if she's truly pregnant? The thought of Sarah spreading the news weighs heavily on me. My parents would be devastated if they believed I was abandoning a pregnant girlfriend, and I can only imagine how my friends would react. I've always prided myself on being a reliable person, and the idea of being perceived as a deadbeat dad is distressing. But at the same time, I can't accept this without verification. Sarah's past behavior has eroded my trust in her word alone, and bringing a child into the world is a massive responsibility, one that I'm not sure either of us is prepared for, especially given the state of our relationship. I've been contemplating reaching out to some of our mutual friends to see if they have any insight, but I'm concerned about stirring up rumors before I have a clear understanding of what's really happening. What if Sarah hasn't shared this news with anyone else yet? I don't want to be the one to spread potentially false information. On the other hand, there's a nagging fear that it might be true. I'm not prepared to become a father. Sarah and I had discussed the idea of having children in the distant future, but never as something immediate. The thought of being tied to Sarah for the rest of my life, especially given how toxic our relationship had become, is overwhelming. I've even wondered if the child might not be mine. Given how accusatory Sarah was about my fidelity, could she have been projecting her own issues? Could there have been someone else involved? It's a distressing thought, but I can't ignore any possibility. The more I think about it, the more confused and frustrated I become. I feel trapped with no good options. If I reach out to Sarah for more information, am I opening myself up to further manipulation? If I ignore her, am I potentially abandoning my child? I know I need to act, but I'm paralyzed by indecision. Every option seems fraught with potential pitfalls. I keep hoping she'll reach out with more information or agree to my request for proof, but so far, there's been nothing but silence. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to whatever Sarah wants to keep the peace, but I know that's not the right approach. If there is a child involved, they deserve parents who are committed and certain, not someone who's just trying to avoid conflict. I've even considered seeking legal advice, but that feels like such a drastic step. What if this turns out to be a misunderstanding or a false alarm? Would involving lawyers at this stage be an overreaction? This whole situation has forced me to reevaluate our relationship. Were there signs I missed? Red flags I ignored? I thought I was being a good boyfriend by trying to reassure her and prove my faithfulness, but did I inadvertently enable her behavior? Should I have ended things sooner? It's been a week since Sarah showed up at my door, and I feel no closer to a resolution. Each passing day feels like a ticking clock. If she is pregnant, decisions will need to be made soon, but how can I decide anything when I'm unsure of the basic facts? I keep questioning whether I'm wrong for insisting on proof. Should I have been more sympathetic or more trusting, or am I justified in my caution given our history? I honestly don't know anymore. So here I am, turning to the internet for advice. I realize this is a complex situation, and maybe I haven't provided all the details needed for a full judgment, but I'm at my wit's end. I need an outside perspective. Am I wrong for not believing my ex-girlfriend and insisting on proof of her pregnancy, or am I justified in my caution given our past? What would you do in my situation? Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to provide an update on the situation with Sarah and her pregnancy claim. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and perspectives have really helped me gain some clarity. Many of you suggested that I should stand firm and insist on proof, while others pointed out that I need to prepare for the possibility that Sarah might actually be pregnant. A few days after our confrontation, Sarah reached out via text. She apologized for her earlier outburst and acknowledged that my doubts were understandable. She agreed to provide medical proof of her pregnancy and to undergo a paternity test once it was feasible. I was relieved to see her taking a more measured approach, though I remained cautious. We arranged to meet at a local coffee shop, a public place to avoid any potential drama and to maintain civility. When we met, Sarah seemed different from how she had appeared at my door. She was calmer and more composed. She handed me an envelope with ultrasound images and a doctor's report confirming her pregnancy. According to the documents, Sarah was about 10 weeks along, which matched the timeline she had previously given me. The ultrasound images were overwhelming. The reality of the situation hit me with a rush of emotions. We spent hours talking. Sarah explained that she had discovered the pregnancy just a week before visiting me and was unsure how to tell me, especially given our rocky breakup. She admitted that her approach, showing up unannounced and making demands, had been misguided and apologized for it. I listened carefully, trying to remain open-minded. I shared my perspective, explaining how her past behavior had made it difficult for me to trust her, and how the sudden news had left me feeling unprepared. We discussed our options. Sarah expressed her desire to keep the baby but understood if I wasn't ready to take on fatherhood. She said she wouldn't pressure me but hoped I would be involved in the child's life. I told her I needed time to process everything, and we agreed to wait for a safe time to perform a non-invasive paternity test, ideally around the 12th week of pregnancy. After our meeting, I felt somewhat better, though still overwhelmed. I decided it was time to inform my family and close friends. I started with my parents, who were stunned. My mom was torn between excitement at the prospect of becoming a grandmother and concern over the circumstances. My dad was skeptical, reminding me of how tumultuous my relationship with Sarah had been. They both supported my decision to get a paternity test and advised me to proceed cautiously. Next, I told my best friend Mike. He was surprised but supportive, offering to be there for me through the process, whatever my decision. He also suggested I might want to consult a lawyer to understand my rights and responsibilities. In the following weeks, Sarah and I kept in touch through text. She updated me on her doctor's visits and how she was feeling. Navigating this new dynamic with someone from my past was strange. Then, about a week ago, Sarah called me, panicked. She said she had started bleeding and was heading to the hospital. I rushed to meet her there. The next few hours were a blur of medical tests, anxious waiting, and intense conversations with doctors. Eventually, we learned that Sarah had suffered a miscarriage. The doctor explained that early miscarriages are common and not anyone's fault. I was stunned. I hadn't fully come to terms with the idea of becoming a father, and now it was all over. Sarah was devastated. Despite our issues, seeing her in such pain was heartbreaking. I stayed with her until she was discharged. The drive back to her place was quiet, and when we arrived, Sarah broke down. She apologized again for her handling of the situation, saying she had been scared and unsure how to proceed. She acknowledged that her past behavior, her jealousy and accusations, had been wrong and that losing the baby made her realize how much she had messed up between us. I listened, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I was saddened by the loss of a potential child, despite my uncertainty about fatherhood. Yet I also felt a sense of relief, which then made me feel guilty. A part of me still wondered if the whole situation had been real. I asked Sarah if she had shared the news with anyone else. She said no, that she had been waiting until after the first trimester to tell her family and friends. So only my parents, Mike and I knew about the situation. That night, we talked extensively about the pregnancy, our failed relationship and what might come next. Sarah mentioned she planned to start therapy to address her trust issues and jealousy. She didn't ask to reconcile or manipulate the situation, which I appreciated. I told her I needed some time and space to process everything. She understood and agreed that it would be best if we didn't see each other for a while. As I left Sarah's apartment that night, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. The emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks had been draining. Now a week later, I'm still trying to process everything. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through my feelings about the situation. Having a neutral person to talk to has been beneficial. I've also been reflecting on my relationship with Sarah and my own actions. While I still stand by my decision to ask for proof of the pregnancy, I recognize there were moments when I could have communicated better or been more understanding of her insecurities. Sarah and I have exchanged a few texts since that night. She's been attending therapy and feels it's helping her understand her behavior more clearly. She's apologized again for how she treated me and for the way she initially handled the pregnancy news. I'm uncertain about our future. Romantically, it seems unlikely we'll get back together given everything that's transpired. However, I'm open to the possibility of building a friendship once we've both had time to heal and grow. Regarding the pregnancy, I still have doubts. The medical documents appeared genuine, and the hospital confirmed the miscarriage. Yet, given our history, a part of me remains skeptical. For my own peace of mind, I've decided to accept that it was real and move forward. This experience has taught me valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the enduring impact of past actions on relationships. I'm trying to apply these lessons to become a better person and partner in the future. My parents and Mike have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They've listened, offered advice, and simply been there for me. I'm thankful for their strong support system. Looking back at my initial post, I can see how bewildered and unsettled I was. I still believe I was right to ask for proof, but I now understand why Sarah might have reacted the way she did. Fear and hormones can drive people to act out of character. In response to those who asked, no, I haven't shared the details with any of our mutual friends. Sarah and I agreed that it's a private matter and that spreading it would only stir up unnecessary drama and gossip. As for work, things have fortunately settled down. The tension with Emily and my other co-workers has eased, and I've focused on my projects, which has been a welcome distraction. I realize this update might not meet everyone's expectations. Life seldom follows neat, clear-cut paths. It's messy and often leaves us with more questions than answers. I'm still processing everything and know it will take time to fully come to terms with it. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, concentrating on my personal growth and healing. I appreciate all the advice and support, it's been invaluable. If anything significant changes, I'll provide another update. For now, I'm focused on moving forward, learning from this experience, and working towards a better future. Update 2. I had hoped to conclude my story with the last update. It seemed like a somewhat decent ending, but life has a way of complicating things. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and my anger from everything that's happened hasn't subsided. Just when I thought the situation with Sarah couldn't get more complicated, I was proven wrong. After the miscarriage, Sarah and I had limited contact. We exchanged occasional texts, mostly with her updating me on her therapy progress and me responding politely. I was still working through everything and trying to move on. Work was going well. I'd immersed myself in a new project, which served as a welcome distraction. Relations with my co-workers, including Emily, had mostly returned to normal, and I was even starting to consider dating again, though I hadn't gone on any dates yet. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a man's voice asked if I was my name. After I confirmed, he introduced himself as Robert and said we needed to talk about Sarah. My stomach sank. I asked who he was, and he revealed that he was Sarah's ex-boyfriend. Apparently, they had been together for a few weeks during a break Sarah and I had taken. I remembered that break. It was after a particularly bad argument, and we had spent about 2 months apart. Robert contacted me to share some information he believed I needed to hear. We arranged to meet at a local bar the following evening. The next 24 hours were filled with anxiety as I considered the implications of what he might reveal. Despite my reluctance, I knew I had to face whatever was coming. When we met, Robert appeared surprisingly composed. He was about my age and seemed like an ordinary guy. He bought us a beer and got straight to the point. Sarah had lied to me. The baby wasn't mine, it was his. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Robert explained that he and Sarah had continued their relationship on and off even after Sarah and I had reconciled. Their last encounter had occurred about a week before Sarah and I broke up for good. He showed me text messages between him and Sarah from months earlier. In them, Sarah expressed her unhappiness with me and her fear of being alone, revealing that she had stayed in the relationship out of fear. The texts included her panicking about the pregnancy and her plans. One particularly shocking message from Sarah to Robert, dated just days before she came to me with the pregnancy claim, read, "I have a plan. I'm going to tell my name, the baby is his. He makes good money and he's always wanted kids. He'll take care of us." The realization that she had cheated on me and tried to manipulate me into raising another man's child was devastating. Robert, feeling guilty after the miscarriage, thought I deserved to know the truth. I thanked him for his honesty, though part of me wished I could go back to being ignorant. We finished our beers in silence, each lost in thought. Before leaving, Robert apologized for his role in the situation. I couldn't bring myself to hate him, as I appreciated his decision to come clean. After Robert left, I sat at the bar for a long time, trying to absorb what I had learned. The bartender, sensing my distress, gave me a free drink. I went home that night feeling numb, unable to eat or sleep. The following day, I called in sick to work. I needed time to process my emotions. I spent the day oscillating between anger and disbelief. How could Sarah have done this? How could she lie so comprehensively? And how had I been so blind? Reflecting on her previous accusations of cheating and her jealous outbursts, it became clear they were projections of her own behavior. After a day of contemplation, I knew I had to confront Sarah. I couldn't let this go unanswered. I texted her to arrange a meeting, which she likely thought was a routine check-in. We met at the same coffee shop where she had shown me the ultrasound pictures. As soon as she saw me, she knew something was amiss. Before she could speak, I laid everything out. The meeting with Robert, the text messages, and all the new information I had. At first, Sarah seemed poised to deny it, but then she broke down in tears, apologizing and saying she never intended for things to go this far. I asked how she could lie so deeply and attempt to trap me into raising a child that wasn't mine. She explained she was scared and desperate, hoping that if she could get me to accept the baby, everything would work out. I told her that what she had done was unforgivable. She had not only betrayed my trust in the worst way but also been willing to drag an innocent child into her deceit. Sarah pleaded for forgiveness, saying she would do anything to make amends, but I knew there was no fixing this. The trust between us was irrevocably shattered. I told her I never wanted to see or hear from her again and hoped she would continue therapy because she clearly needed help. Then I stood up and walked out, ignoring her desperate pleas for me to stay. The next few days were a blur. I informed my parents and Mike of what had happened, and they were furious on my behalf. My mom wanted to call Sarah and confront her, but I asked her not to. I just wanted to be done with the situation. I also decided to inform a few mutual friends to preempt any potential misinformation from Sarah. I didn't go into all the details. I simply said Sarah had cheated and lied about the pregnancy. Most were shocked and supportive. One friend admitted she had suspected Sarah might be cheating and had seen her with another man but didn't realize it was serious. She apologized for not coming forward sooner. I was hurt that she hadn't said anything earlier, but I understood her reluctance to get involved. At work, I finally confided in Emily about everything that had transpired. Her response was incredibly supportive and understanding. She admitted she had always felt something was off about Sarah but had held back from saying anything negative about my girlfriend. Through all this, Emily and I have grown closer, and I'm starting to see her in a new light. Who knows, there might be potential for something more in the future. Since our confrontation at the coffee shop, I haven't heard from Sarah. I've blocked her number and all her social media accounts. A mutual friend informed me that Sarah has moved back in with her parents and continues with therapy. Part of me hopes she gets the help she needs, but mostly, I just want her out of my life permanently. Reflecting on our relationship, it's clear now how toxic it was. Sarah's jealousy and insecurity weren't just minor issues, they were indicators of deeper problems. I now realize I should have ended things much sooner. I've been contemplating why I stayed with Sarah for so long and endured her behavior. I think part of it was fear of being alone, another part was the misguided hope that I could fix her and earn her trust, and, I'm ashamed to admit, a part of me enjoyed feeling needed, even if it was in an unhealthy way. Coming to terms with the loss of the future I had envisioned has been one of the hardest parts. Even though I had doubts about the pregnancy, a part of me had started to imagine what being a father might be like. Having that possibility snatched away, only to discover it was all a lie, has been painful. However, I also feel relieved. Relieved that I learned the truth before it was too late and that I'm no longer bound to Sarah for the rest of my life. In the past few weeks, I've focused on myself. I've resumed running, a hobby I had abandoned during my relationship with Sarah. I'm reading more, spending time with friends, and even considering a solo trip. Work has been a great distraction. I've immersed myself in a new project at work, and my boss has noticed. He's hinted at a potential promotion if I continue performing well. It's nice to have something positive to concentrate on. As for dating, I'm not ready to dive into anything serious yet. I need time to heal and rebuild my trust. But I'm open to meeting someone new when the time is right. This experience has taught me a lot about myself, relationships, and trust. I've learned the importance of trusting your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. To those who followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. You helped me gain clarity when I was too close to the situation to see it. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. Trust is invaluable. And once it's broken, it's incredibly hard to restore. Don't stay in a relationship where you're constantly questioning your partner or yourself. And if someone reveals their true nature, believe them the first time. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are more difficult than others, but overall, I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to the future and confident that I can face whatever challenges come my way. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time for me to close this chapter and move on. Thank you all again for your support throughout this turbulent journey. Here's to new beginnings and better days ahead. It's been about 10 months since my last update, and I didn't think I'd be writing another one. I thought the chapter with Sarah was closed for good, but life has a way of surprising us. After everything with Sarah and the revelation about her cheating, I focused on moving forward. I threw myself into work, continued with therapy, and began rebuilding my social life. Things were going well. The promotion my boss hinted at came through, and I'm now leading my own team on a major project, which has been challenging but rewarding. Emily and I have been working closely, and I have to admit there's been some flirting between us. We haven't acted on it yet, partly because I'm wary of getting involved with a coworker after everything that happened with Sarah, but the attraction is definitely there. Then, about a month ago, everything changed again. While at the grocery store one evening, just picking up dinner supplies, I ran into Robert, yes, the same Robert who had revealed the truth about the baby. We were both stunned by the coincidence. Robert asked if I wanted to grab a coffee and catch up. I hesitated at first, questioning whether I really wanted to revisit everything, but my curiosity got the better of me and I agreed. Over coffee, Robert updated me on Sarah's situation. After our last encounter, she'd had a complete breakdown, quitting her job, moving back in with her parents, and diving into intensive therapy. Robert had been in touch with her parents, feeling a sense of responsibility for her current state. He told me that Sarah had recently discovered she was pregnant again, and this time, it was definitely his child. Although they weren't rekindling their relationship, Robert intended to co-parent with her. I was filled with anger. Why should Sarah get to have a baby after deceiving me about the last one? Yet I also felt a sense of relief, glad that I wasn't in Robert's position, tied to Sarah for the foreseeable future. Robert seemed genuinely excited about fatherhood but admitted he was anxious about co-parenting with Sarah given their complicated past. He mentioned that Sarah had made significant progress in therapy, addressing her trust issues and manipulative behavior, but he remained cautious. Before we parted ways, Robert hesitated and said, "There's something else you should know. Sarah's been asking about you and wants to apologize in person for everything she did." I told Robert I'd think it over but made no promises. In the days following, I couldn't shake the thoughts of what Robert had shared. I discussed it with my therapist, trying to navigate my emotions. On one hand, I had no obligation to meet Sarah or hear her out. Her actions had been unforgivable, and I had every right to keep her out of my life. On the other hand, a small part of me wondered if hearing her apology might bring some closure. After much consideration, I decided to meet with Sarah. I figured facing it head-on was better than always wondering what if. I asked Robert to arrange the meeting, making it clear that this was a one-time occurrence. We met at a park on a Saturday. I chose a public park for our meeting, neutral ground to avoid any potential drama. When Sarah arrived, I noticed how different she looked, smaller and less confident. She sat on the bench next to me, maintaining a respectful distance. For a moment, we were silent. Then she took a deep breath and began. "I know nothing I say can undo what I did," she started. "But I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything. For the cheating, the lies, and for trying to trap you with a baby that wasn't yours. It was inexcusable, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." She went on to explain that she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which shed light on but didn't excuse her past behavior. She spoke about the intensive therapy she was undergoing, learning to manage her emotions and insecurities in healthier ways. "I'm not sharing this to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I understand how much I hurt you, and I'm doing everything I can to ensure I never treat anyone that way again." After she finished, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, forgiveness wasn't something I could offer, at least not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, and the betrayal too profound. However, I did express hope that she would continue her therapy and work on becoming a better person, especially now that she was going to be a mother. Sarah nodded, thanking me for listening and agreeing to meet. As she got up to leave, she paused and said, "I truly am happy for you. Robert told me about your promotion and about Emily. I hope things work out for you. You deserve to be happy." With that, she walked away. I remained on that bench for a long time, reflecting on what had just happened. It wasn't the dramatic showdown I might have imagined, but rather a quiet closing of a chapter, a final end to that part of my life. In the weeks since our meeting, I've spent a lot of time thinking about Sarah, our relationship, and everything that transpired. I've come to realize that while I may never forgive her actions, I can release the anger I've been holding on to. It's not about excusing what she did but about freeing myself from the negative emotions that have weighed me down. In my personal life, things are finally looking up. You might recall I mentioned some flirtation with Emily. About a week after my meeting with Sarah, Emily and I decided to address the situation directly. We've chosen to explore a relationship, with the understanding that we'll maintain professionalism at work and keep our boss informed to prevent any conflicts of interest. It's still early, but being with Emily feels refreshingly different from any past relationship. The trust and communication we have are levels beyond what I experienced with Sarah. We're taking it slow, aware of the potential challenges of dating a coworker, but so far, things have been promising. My friends and family have been very supportive of this new development. Mike even joked that he'd seen Emily and me ending up together ever since the crazy ex-girlfriend incident at the office. My parents are just glad to see me happy again. Work is going smoothly as well. The project I'm leading is progressing well, and my team has come together effectively. It's gratifying to see the results of our hard work starting to show. Regarding Sarah and Robert, I've chosen to keep my distance. Robert occasionally updates me, which I appreciate, but I've made it clear that I don't want to be involved in their lives. I wish them well, particularly for the sake of their child, but that chapter is firmly closed for me. To everyone who's followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. Your input was invaluable, especially during those challenging times right after I discovered Sarah's deception. I'm uncertain about the future. My relationship with Emily is still new and its direction remains to be seen. My career is on an upward path, but I know there will be hurdles ahead. Life is inherently unpredictable. However, for the first time in a long while, I'm genuinely excited about what's to come. I feel like I've been given a fresh start, a chance to apply all the lessons I've learned and build a life that's truly fulfilling. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time to close this chapter and focus on the future. Thanks again to everyone for your support throughout this tumultuous journey. Here's to new beginnings, hard-earned wisdom, and the endless possibilities that lie ahead.
Should I reveal to my friend, who is now married with kids, that we secretly had a child together in high school and put him up for adoption? Original post, June 26, 2024. I slept with my best friend while we were in high school. We always joked about how we were friends with benefits and it was strictly just friends having fun. He didn't know at the time that I was desperately and madly in love with him. The last time we had sex, I did end up getting pregnant. I had our baby and put him up for adoption as we were both young, and I didn't want to obligate him to me or make him take a different path in life. These are things that he had freaked out about previously when his girlfriend had a scare. Many years later, about 6, he confessed to me that he had always loved me and that he thought he had no chance because I always said we were just friends with benefits. Anyway, I've been in contact with our son and he wants to know more about his dad. Our son knows that his dad doesn't know about him. I guess my question is, should I tell my best friend after all these years? I'm afraid to tell him since he has a wife and 2 kids now. Update 1, I just got off the phone with my friend. I told him everything. Apparently, he knew that I was pregnant. My friend had let it slip one time. He thought it was his since he knew that I was only sleeping with him. He didn't know that I had the baby but said he was happy that there's a part of us together out in the world. He said he'd love to have a relationship with his son and wants me to make arrangements for all of us to meet. Thank you for all of your perspectives and advice. This went way better than I was expecting. Update 2. I'm flying out this weekend to speak with both my best friend and his wife. In particular, his wife wanted to speak with me and I thought it would be best if we did it in person. This is our first time meeting. I'll keep you updated. Update 3. I met with both of them and posted an update in a separate post with the same title. Additional information from OP on her background with her friend. OP, I want to hopefully provide some clarity to the whole situation. I was a senior at 16, skipped grades, and my best friend, let's call him Bobby, was a junior, he was 17. I have known him since I was 8. My parents were not around a lot and when they were gone I'd stay at Bobby's house. That's why his mom and I are so close. She has been both of my parents at times. Cutting her off and limiting communication just isn't in the cards for me personally, as she is someone I consider family. After I graduated I moved to a different country to go to college, which eventually I did after having our son. Some of the factors that played into the adoption route was fear, not having anything to provide for our son, and addiction. I still have a tendency to try to protect him when I can, and leave out the addiction part. Bobby was heavily using by the time I graduated and was stealing from his mom and on the streets for weeks at a time. I understand that I did take his choice away from him. I get that. Please see it from my side as well though. I was 16 and all of these things were happening. I knew that no matter what, I needed to get away from the environment to make a sound choice, and I did leave as soon as I was able to. He heard from my friend talking to someone else, something like, "Did you hear she was pregnant?" He had assumed it was his and that I terminated the pregnancy, which is why he never talked to me about it. He confessed 6 years ago while he was single and I was in a relationship that he had always loved me. I took it as he was in love with me back then when we were teenagers. We are both married to other people and are both happy in our own marriages and lives that we have built separately. He has one child from before his marriage and one child with his wife. Plus, of course, our son. He has been married for 1 year and I have been married for 5 years. Bobby has been sober for 3 years now, the longest he has been sober. Relevant comments. OP responds to multiple questions on if her friend knew she was pregnant. OP. I moved out of the country so he never knew that I was pregnant. No, I was about 3 months pregnant when I graduated from high school and moved out of the country. So he never knew that I was pregnant or had a kid. I did not see him for 2 years after, but we've always stayed in touch through phone calls, messages, Skype, FaceTime, snail mail. OP clarifies the details regarding her friend telling his feelings about her. OP, 6 years after high school he admitted to loving me. It was important to me because I was protecting a friendship, and I think if I'd known that he loved me then, I would have told him when I was pregnant. 12 years after having our child he is now married with kids. I'm married too. I do know that his wife doesn't like when we are in contact with each other, and I try to respect that boundary. OP on if she has a relationship with her son who she gave up for adoption. OP, his parents and I have a really good relationship. They knew everything and wanted me to have a relationship with my son. I run everything by them first to make sure they're comfortable with it. They couldn't have kids of their own and I cannot have kids now after my birth to him. I am very blessed that they chose my son and that I have such amazing people in my life. They're a dream come true given all the circumstances. They choose to let me have a relationship with my son, and I know it's because of their choice that I've had every opportunity in my life to be a mom, to have a career, to be able to provide for my son. I don't ever lose sight of the power their choice has. OP on if she still had feelings for her friend or not. OP. I feel like we've been through a lot together and I'm thankful to have him as a friend, but I don't still have the feelings I once had for him. The feelings have evolved and changed into just always hoping for the best for him and continued sobriety. Our conversations now consist of us telling each other to miss you, hope everything is well, how is the family, etc. I feel like people blew the dynamics of our friendship now way out of proportion. Again, as I've said many times in this thread, I have moved on and have had many years to do so. I'm happily married and have been for 5 years. I don't take my commitment to my husband lightly, nor would I ever do anything to jeopardize the life we have built together. Update, June 29, 2024. Should I tell my friend we have a kid together? Okay y'all, here's the update. My talk with my best friend's wife Wendy was very enlightening. I did not know so much had not been shared with Wendy from my best friend Bobby. Wendy and I talked for hours about both my and Bobby's past as well as the current situation. Wendy was unaware of several important details. She didn't know that I've been married for 5 years, and that I've known Bobby and his mom since I was 8. She was also unaware that I practically lived with Bobby and his mom for 8 years, and that my parents are not in the picture, making his mom the closest thing I have to a mother. Additionally, she had been led to believe that I am Bobby's other son's biological mother, which is not true. The last one literally had me in a spiral, and there is so much to unpack there. I'm not sure why she was led to believe that, but when I asked questions about it, she said that's just what she's been told by other people in the family. After our private talk, our husbands joined us, and I shared all of the reasons behind the decision that was made. Bobby said that if I had come to him back then and told him, he most likely would have asked me to terminate the pregnancy or opt out of being involved, given the severity of his addiction and his mental state. He said he was happy that he's now in a place to be able to have a stable relationship with our son if our son wants to have that relationship with him. He also said that he understands why I made the decisions I made because he was not in a good place. We were not in a place where we could have raised a child, and that it wasn't an environment to be in for both a child or myself. Again, I'm just so thankful that despite all the years and things we have been through, he is able to understand the choice that was made, and I'm so thankful that now he is sober and in a healthy mindset. We all set some boundaries and discussed keeping communication via text so we can all see what is being said. Wendy and I both felt that it was not necessary for Bobby and me to meet together with our son unless he specifically asked for that, like if he has questions for both of us. In my opinion, Wendy was very understanding, especially after everything she learned from our conversation prior to this. Wendy and I exchanged numbers and will remain in contact. Relevant comments. OP explains the facts on Bobby's second child he had with a different woman prior to his marriage to Wendy, and if the second child thinks OP is his mom. OP, I don't think so. My husband and I are his godparents, and he lived with us for about a year when he was 2, but I don't think Bobby would tell his son that I'm his mom, or at least I would hope not. Yes, she, the child's birth mother, is completely absent from his life. She cheated and then left everything behind, including their son. When Bobby went back into rehab, my husband and I took care of their son. I did get some clarity. She said that both Bobby's half-siblings had mentioned that I was his son's mom because of pictures they had seen with us together and that they had assumed I was his mother. Apparently, when Bobby is asked about his son's birth mom, he tells everyone he doesn't want to talk about it. So from what I can gather, since he doesn't talk about it and there are only pictures of me with him as a baby, an assumption was made by a few parties. Bobby is now opening up more to Wendy about it. OP provided more details on her son's adoptive parents and how it came to having a great relationship with them while being present in her son's life. OP. It's a lot to put into a few posts. There are so many different dynamics that I've been trying to explain. My son's adoptive parents are close to me, and I have known them forever. At the time, they were my parents' closest friends. When I was not living with Bobby's mom, I was living with them. Around the time of my pregnancy, and even before, they had struggled with getting pregnant. When I found out I was pregnant and had made the decision, I knew they'd be the perfect family in the way they loved and cared for me even when I wasn't theirs to love and care for. Once I decided the path I was taking, and they were on board, they were asked to relocate for work, and I joined them in their relocation. When I say I'm truly blessed for my son's adoptive parents, I truly mean it because I know all the stars in the universe aligned for everything to happen the way it did. Honestly, they're the most amazing humans. I could go on forever about how selfless, caring, and generous they are. They're literal saints who walk the earth. I will forever be in awe of them, and my son knows just how I feel about his parents. Relevant comments. Drugs are bad, okay. My half-sister grew up believing her mother's husband was her father until she accidentally found the adoption papers when she was 12. It was then revealed to her that she was my father's daughter. Except she probably isn't, and she doesn't know this. Only my mom and I know. See, her mom had a boyfriend who got sent to jail for drugs, so this guy's 2 best friends comforted her. When she found out she was pregnant, she called my dad and told him my sister was his because he was the only one who'd gotten clean. The problem is, my sister's mom was tan, dark-haired and dark-eyed, and so was my dad. The other 2 guys involved were blue-eyed blondes. My sister is a pale blue-eyed blonde. It's not impossible that she's my father's daughter, but it's much, much more likely one of the other guys is. The funny thing about genetics is that you can't always go by looks to determine a child's paternity. You will always have to do a DNA test to be 100% certain because recessive genes do pop up. And genetics is just weird in general. Like how some women were accused of cheating because their kid had none of the features of the father's family, yet when they finally get tested, he ends up being 100% the father, and they find out that the kid inherited one of the grandparents' traits that was passed down by genetic lottery. Either way, drugs are bad, and I have yet to meet someone who is heavily on drugs that made good choices other than quitting. When I was born and growing up, my dad's family was convinced my mom had cheated because I looked nothing like him. The big one was that I was a pale blonde child until I turned 7 or so, then over the course of about 6 months, my hair turned dark brown. When my sister was born many years later, her birth photo was literally identical to mine, except she came out with brown hair. Genetics is weird. And yes, we are both genetically our parents' children. Our neighbor has a little boy who had cherubic blonde curls as a toddler. They go away every summer to stay with family for 3 months. And last year when they came back, I kept thinking that they had brought a nephew or something home with them. Nope, he's their kid. In the course of a summer, he shot up 6 inches, and his hair turned dark brown and flat. Now the kid who was a baby a minute ago is the blonde cherubic one. And I expect the same thing will happen to him this summer while they are gone. I can't fathom this behavior. My husband is the single most interesting person in the world to me. I ask him stuff all the time about his thoughts, hobbies, past and opinions on topics. It's not uncommon for us to spend an entire evening having forgotten about the movie we were going to watch, just talking about stuff and sharing stories, debating points of view. He's my husband, I chose him, and I'm endlessly, compellingly fascinated by him. I swear to God, some people just walk through life, half asleep, bump into someone who is hopefully not inherently repulsive to them, and commit to this near stranger for as long as the roller coaster lasts. It's honestly irritating sometimes when other women, who nearly to a one just jump into a relationship with the first guy they meet who can kinda hold a conversation, ask me how I found such an amazing partner, and then they are shocked and a little appalled when I say that I was picky as hell. I had criteria for what I knew I needed and wanted in a partner, and I didn't deviate. But I almost always get back this weird attitude that being picky and having standards is somehow mean and unfair of me. And then these same people know nothing about their partner and also complain about a constant lack of healthy communication. They jokingly ask if my husband has any brothers and then whine and compare my amazing, wonderful, supportive, always willing to learn and grow husband to some dude who is on his last strike at work with a spotty job history and an alcohol problem that they dragged home from the bar. If I may be petty, how very dare they compare the literal years of careful sifting and requisite verbal abuse from assholes I did to the human dating equivalent of letting a raccoon you saw contemplating your garbage cans move in with you and wreck your house. But no, everyone's like, we didn't think Jana was learning anything from casually dating around for 10 years, but then the first guy she got serious with, she married, and he's the best, kindest, most reliable man and husband we've ever met. And we asked her how she did it and she gave us very clear answers about not settling and knowing yourself, what you want in life and need in a partner. But I don't know, it seems kinda mean that she blocked guys who only gave one-word responses on dating app, because otherwise they message her vile things, so we won't be doing that. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm at the point where I'm starting to deflect the how did you manage to find one of the few remaining great men in existence questions with, he is wonderful, the other day It's a double win for me. They seem to give up asking after a few encounters, and I get to talk about how awesome, funny, and clever my husband is. My stepdad tried to kick me out of the house, but he didn't know it was legally mine thanks to my late grandmother's will. I am a 19-year-old male and have resided with my mother and stepfather for the past 3 years. Recently, things have become increasingly difficult, and I'm in desperate need of advice. My mother married my stepdad when I was 16. Initially, everything appeared fine. He was pleasant enough when we were all together. However, I noticed a change in his behavior when it was just the two of us. He would make remarks about how I was lazy or not contributing enough around the house. I tried to ignore his comments and simply stayed out of his way. As time passed, the situation deteriorated. Whenever my mom wasn't around, he would criticize everything I did, from the way I handled chores, to the music I listened to and even how I dressed. Nothing I did was satisfactory to him. I attempted to talk to my mom about it several times, but she always dismissed my concerns. She would say things like, oh, he's just trying to help you become more responsible. Or, I'm sure he doesn't mean it that way. The real issue began about 6 months ago when my mom discovered she was pregnant. My stepdad was ecstatic. He began discussing plans for the baby's room and expressing his excitement about becoming a father. Although I was happy for my mom, I couldn't shake the feeling of being left out. That's when the fabrications began. My stepdad started telling my mom various falsehoods about me, claiming I stayed out late when I didn't or that I was being disrespectful to him, which was untrue. I tried to defend myself, but it was always my word against his. My mom seemed uncertain and didn't know whom to trust. Last week, my stepdad announced his intention to remodel the house to create a nursery for the baby. He talked about knocking down walls and rearranging rooms. Initially, I didn't think much of it, but then the situation took an unexpected turn. 2 days ago, my mom called me for a talk. She seemed uneasy and avoided making eye contact. She began, honey, you're 19 now and becoming a man. We think it might be time for you to get your own place. I was taken aback and managed to stammer, what? Why? Did I do something wrong? She quickly reassured me. No, it's not that. It's just with the baby coming, we need the space, and you're old enough to be on your own. It will be good for you to learn some independence. Her tone and body language made it clear that this wasn't her idea. My stepdad was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, with a smug look on his face. That's when I realized he had orchestrated this. I tried to argue, explaining that I wasn't ready to move out. I'm still in community college and working part-time at a local grocery store. There's no way I can afford my own place right now. But my mom kept insisting that it would be good for me and that I needed to grow up. The worst part was when my stepdad joined in. He said, "You've got 2 days to find a place. We need to start the remodeling soon, and we can't have you underfoot while we're getting ready for the baby." 2 days? How am I supposed to find a place to live in 2 days? I have no savings, no knowledge about renting an apartment, and no one to stay with. All my friends still live at home too. Yesterday, I spent the entire day in a daze. I couldn't concentrate at work and kept making mistakes. My boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. I mumbled something about family problems and tried to pull myself together. When I got home, I overheard my mom and stepdad talking in the kitchen. My stepdad was saying it was high time I moved out and how I was holding them back. My mom sounded uncertain, but he kept talking over her, saying things like, "You've got to cut the cord sometime," and, "He'll thank us for this later." I wanted to barge in and tell them both off, but I knew it would be pointless. My stepdad has my mom under his control, and anything I say will just be twisted and used against me. 2 days ago, my mom called me for a talk. She seemed uneasy and avoided making eye contact. She began, "Honey, you're 19 now and becoming a man. We think it might be time for you to get your own place." I was taken aback and managed to stammer, "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" She quickly reassured me, No, it's not that. It's just with the baby coming, we need the space, and you're old enough to be on your own. It will be good for you to learn some independence." Her tone and body language made it clear that this wasn't her idea. My stepdad was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, with a smug look on his face. That's when I realized he had orchestrated this. I tried to argue, explaining that I wasn't ready to move out. I'm still in community college and working part-time at a local grocery store. There's no way I can afford my own place right now. But my mom kept insisting that it would be good for me and that I needed to grow up. The worst part was when my stepdad joined in. He said, "You've got 2 days to find a place. We need to start the remodeling soon, and we can't have you underfoot while we're getting ready for the baby." 2 days. How am I supposed to find a place to live in 2 days? I have no savings, no knowledge about renting an apartment, and no one to stay with. All my friends still live at home too. Yesterday, I spent the entire day in a daze. I couldn't concentrate at work and kept making mistakes. My boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. I mumbled something about family problems and tried to pull myself together. When I got home, I overheard my mom and stepdad talking in the kitchen. My stepdad was saying it was high time I moved out and how I was holding them back. My mom sounded uncertain, but he kept talking over her, saying things like, "You've got to cut the cord sometime," and, "He'll thank us for this later." I wanted to barge in and tell them both off, but I knew it would be pointless. My stepdad has my mom under his control, and anything I say will just be twisted and used against me. So here I am, sitting in my room, desperately trying to figure out what to do next. With less than 24 hours to come up with a plan, I'm completely at a loss. I can't afford an apartment, have no nearby relatives who could take me in, and I don't even know where to start looking for a roommate. I've considered reasoning with my mom one last time, but I'm worried it will only make things worse. My stepdad will likely accuse me of trying to manipulate her. I've also thought about refusing to leave, but I'm unsure what the consequences would be. Could they legally kick me out? Would they call the police? I don't want to cause a big scene, but I also don't want to end up homeless. Part of me wants to pack a bag and leave tonight, but I don't know where I would go. I might be able to crash on a friend's couch for a night or two, but that's not a long-term solution. I feel like my entire world is falling apart. This is the only home I've ever known, and now I'm being forced out with no warning and no support. I'm furious at my stepdad for orchestrating this, hurt that my mom is going along with it, and terrified about what will happen to me. I keep thinking about all the things I'm going to miss, the smell of my mom's cooking, the familiar creaks of the floorboards, even the stupid arguments with my stepdad. It might not have been perfect, but it was home. And what about the baby? I was actually looking forward to being a big brother, even if it was going to be strange. Now I might not even get to know my little sister or brother. Will my mom and stepdad just pretend I don't exist? I'm trying to stay calm and think logically, but it's incredibly difficult. Every time I start to make a plan, my mind blanks out with panic. How am I supposed to juggle school, work, and finding a place to live all at once? And even if I do find somewhere, how will I afford it? I've spent hours scrolling through rental listings online, but everything is so expensive. Even the cheapest studios are far beyond my part-time salary, and most places require first and last month's rent plus a security deposit. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? I've thought about dropping out of school to work full-time, but that feels like giving up on my future. I've worked so hard to keep my grades up and I don't want to throw that away, but I can't see how I can continue attending classes if I don't have a place to live. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. This isn't fair. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a bad kid. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I've never been in trouble with the law. I help out around the house. I get decent grades. I have a job. Why am I being punished? I keep replaying conversations with my stepdad in my head, wondering if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I had stood up to him more or if I had tried harder to bond with him, things would be different. But deep down, I know that's not true. He made up his mind about me a long time ago and nothing I could have done would have changed that. I've thought about reaching out to my real dad, but we haven't spoken in years. He left when I was little and has never shown much interest in being part of my life. I don't even know if he'd answer if I called. As for other families, my grandparents passed away a year ago and I don't really know my aunts and uncles. They live in different states and we've never been close. I can't imagine any of them would be willing to take me in. The most difficult part is the overwhelming sense of isolation. I can't discuss this with my mom because she has clearly chosen her side. My friends try to be supportive, but none of them truly grasp what I'm experiencing. They all seem to think that moving out is some exciting adventure, not realizing that I'm being pushed out without any preparation or place to go. I've considered posting on social media to ask if anyone knows of a cheap room for rent, but I'm too embarrassed. I don't want everyone knowing my situation or thinking I'm a failure who can't take care of himself. As time passes, I'm becoming increasingly desperate. I've started looking at ads for roommates, but most of them prefer someone older or with a full-time job. I've even thought about sleeping in my car for a while, but I don't know if that's safe or even legal. I keep hoping that my mom will come to her senses, realize how insane this is, and tell my stepdad to back off. But every time I see her, she just gives me a sad pitying look and asks if I've found a place yet. It's like she's already given up on me. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, about to be pushed off. I'm not prepared for this. I lack the skills and resources to live independently. I'm terrified of ending up homeless or having to drop out of school. If anyone has gone through a similar situation or has any advice, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm running out of time and options and I don't know where else to turn. Thank you for reading this far, and I apologize for the lengthy post. I just needed to get it all out. Update. Hey everyone, I can't believe I'm writing this update. So much has happened in the last 24 hours, and my head is still spinning. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post with advice and support. It really helped me get through a tough night. After I posted, I was still panicking about what to do. That's when I remembered my grandma's sister, who has always been like a godmother to me. I hadn't thought of her at first because she lives pretty far away, but I was desperate and decided to give her a call. As soon as I explained the situation, she got really quiet. Then she said, "Don't you worry about a thing, sweetie. You don't need to go anywhere. I'm coming there tomorrow and we'll sort this all out." I was confused but relieved. I tried to tell her it wasn't necessary for her to come all this way, but she insisted. She told me not to say anything to my mom or stepdad and just act normal until she got here. The next day, my stepdad was growing more impatient. He repeatedly asked if I'd found a place yet, making comments about how I needed to be out by the afternoon. I kept my head down and told him I was still looking. At around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. My stepdad answered it, and I immediately recognized my godmother's voice. She sounded unusually angry, which was strange because she's usually very calm. She marched into the living room where my mom and I were sitting and announced, "We need to talk, all of us now." My stepdad tried to argue, saying it was a family matter, but my godmother shut him down. "I am family," she declared, "and I have something very important to tell you all." That's when she revealed the shocking news. She looked directly at me and said, "Honey, this house is legally yours. Your grandmother left it to you in her will. You're the owner, and no one can force you to leave." I was stunned. My mom was equally shocked, and my stepdad's face turned red with anger. He began sputtering, claiming it couldn't be true, but my godmother pulled out some documents from her purse. She explained that my grandma had amended her will shortly before she passed away. Apparently, she'd been aware of my mom's relationship with my stepdad, which had begun before their marriage, and she didn't trust him. Concerned that he might take advantage of my mom and me, she decided to leave the house to me to ensure our protection. My mom was in tears, questioning why she had never been informed about this. My godmother clarified that the changes were made quickly and secretly while my grandma was on her deathbed. She had promised my grandma to keep it a secret unless it became absolutely necessary. Now, looking at my stepdad, she said, "It's necessary." My stepdad completely lost his temper. He started yelling about how it was unfair and how we had deceived him. He even tried to snatch the papers from my godmother, but she quickly pulled them away. That was when I finally found my voice. I stood up and firmly told him to stop. I declared, "This is my house, and I won't tolerate you acting like this here." Saying it felt strange but also empowering. For the first time, I felt like I had some control over the situation. My mom was still crying, torn between me and my stepdad. She looked confused and conflicted. I felt sympathy for her, but I was also angry that she had gone along with his scheme to kick me out. After things calmed down a bit, we all sat down to talk. My godmother explained the legal details, and it turns out I've been the owner of the house since my 18th birthday. My stepdad kept trying to argue, but there wasn't much he could say. In the end, I made a decision. I told them that I was willing to let everyone stay in the house, including my stepdad and the baby when it comes, but I had conditions. First, my stepdad had to start treating me with respect. No more criticism, no more lies to my mom about me. Second, we all had to go to family counseling to work on our relationships. And third, any major decisions about the house had to be discussed with me first. My mom agreed right away. My stepdad wasn't happy, but he didn't have much choice. It was either accept my terms or leave. It's been a few days now, and things are still tense. My stepdad barely speaks to me, but at least he's not being openly hostile anymore. My mom seems torn between guilt over what happened and relief that we're all still together. I'm still processing everything. It's weird to suddenly be the owner of a house at 19. I've got a lot to learn about property ownership and responsibilities, but I'm also feeling more secure than I have in a long time. I know we've got a long way to go before we're anything like a happy family, but at least now I know I have a place here, and no one can take that away from me. Thank you again to everyone who offered support and advice, and a huge thank you to my grandma, wherever she is, for looking out for me even after she was gone. I promise I'll do my best to take care of this house and make her proud.
I was kicked out at 16 and struggled for years. Now I have a house, and my sister and her junkie husband have invaded and demanded to live with me. When I was 16, my parents and twin sister kicked me out. I lived in a tent and struggled for years. Now I have a house, and they showed up uninvited with my sister's family, demanding to move in. My sister was the one who convinced our parents to throw me out at 16, claiming there was no space for me. I spent 12 years fighting to secure my own place, and now they want me to let my sister move in because she's pregnant with her fourth child. As a 28-year-old man, I've endured my parents' toxicity since childhood. My twin sister has always been a thorn in my side. People say twins support each other, but in my case, my twin drags me down whenever she can. Childhood bullying wasn't enough. She has reappeared in my life, wanting to move into my house with her family, despite being the one who threw me out at 16. Her narcissism, fueled by our parents' poor parenting, is relentless. They always wanted a daughter and made it clear they would have terminated the pregnancy if it had been just me. I owe my existence to my sister. My sister never missed a chance to flaunt her entitlement. Growing up unwanted in my household was tough. Everything revolved around her. Despite being the same age, I wasn't allowed to touch her toys. She often got new clothes while I only received clothes on Christmas and our birthday. If we didn't share a birthday, they wouldn't have bothered celebrating it. In fact, if I didn't share my birthday with my sister, I wouldn't exist. I got the bare minimum, not out of love, but to save their faces from judgmental relatives. The only positive aspect of my childhood was my grandfather, the only person who saw through their BS. Sadly, he passed away when I was 13. That was the worst day of my life because I had no one to have my back. We lived in a cramped house in the suburbs. My sister and I shared a room, but it felt more like I had a bed and a tiny closet under her room. The entire space was filled with her clothes, toys, and posters. Complaining was not an option, as my parents believed they were doing enough for me. My sister didn't like me being in her room, so I was only allowed in at night to sleep. Even when I was sick, I had to lie on the couch because, as a girl, she needed privacy. I couldn't wait to turn 18 and move out. It seemed my family was even more eager to get rid of me. When we were 16, my sister got pregnant by a 19-year-old loser. His parents had kicked him out after he failed the 8th grade 3 times. My parents got them married, and my dad found him a job as a cleaner at his factory. My father, who works as a mechanic at an automobile manufacturing company, brought him home. Naturally, I had to move out of my room to make space for him. Our house had only 2 rooms and a tiny living area. When I asked if I could sleep on the couch, my father refused, saying he uses it when my mom's snoring becomes unbearable in winter. I was told to find a place for myself. To make matters worse, my loser brother-in-law would say, "Dude, it's not tough to find a place for yourself." My parents threw me out when I was 15, and yet I managed to pull my life together. Now I have a family. Trust me, it gets better out there. I sighed. Yeah, if being a junkie and impregnating a minor means putting your life together, then sure. Most of my relatives lived far away, and my parents threatened me not to show up at any of their places to avoid exposing their toxicity. I asked a few friends if I could crash on their couches, but no luck. Why would their parents allow me in their house when my own parents kicked me out? One classmate living in a garage let me stay for a few months until his parents found out and kicked me out. I slept on a bench on the sidewalk for a few days until the cops rounded me up and brought me home. My parents claimed I had run away. They took me in that night, but my father got me a makeshift tent from a junkyard and told me to set it up in the backyard as a reward for staying silent in front of the cops and not showing up at relatives' places. The tent was still safer than sleeping in the open. Summer was bearable, but winter was brutal. One night, it was so cold I thought I might die from the cold. I knocked on the house but no one responded. Desperate, I knocked on my parents' bedroom window, and my dad yelled from inside not to disturb him or he'd come out and knock me down. I felt so miserable that I wanted to die. I cried the whole night. The next day, I went looking for a job that would provide a place to sleep. A bakery shop needed a worker for their factory about 20 miles away. They agreed to give me a place to sleep and offered me food. They baked at home and needed a helping hand. They offered me to live in their backyard, but I had to clean it up. I agreed. The place was pretty messed up with flour and sugar everywhere, not to mention the rodents living off it. But I was at my lowest point and took the job. I packed my stuff and left. My sister was even happy and said, "Good that you're leaving, we don't have space for you here." No one even bothered to ask where I was going. I cleaned up the place and made it livable. Initially, it was hard to get rid of the rodents that came searching for food, but eventually, I felt comfortable living there. I had to drop out of high school, just a few months shy of the final year exams. My friends urged me to stay in my parents' backyard and finish high school, but I had given up. I focused on my job and lived off my salary. Soon, I realized I needed to upskill to get a better job. I picked up a few skills. My dad is a mechanic, so I grew up playing with his toolbox. It saved my parents from buying me toys, and I also helped Dad with plumbing around the house. I saved up and took a course, eventually landing a job at a car plant. I worked tirelessly to climb the ladder, and now I'm a supervisor. Recently, an old friend was urgently selling his house due to divorce issues and wanted a quick buyer. I was hesitant to buy a 3-bedroom house, but he offered a hefty discount on the market price and allowed me to make the down payment in parts. I jumped at the opportunity. 2 weeks ago I moved into my new house, and today, I found unexpected guests at my door, my parents, sister, and brother-in-law. It was a shock because I had been no contact with them for years, and they hadn't reached out to me either. This house is nearly 15 miles from their place, so there's no way they stumbled upon it by chance. I'm not in touch with any relatives, either in person or on social media, but I suspect a neighbor might have informed them. I still keep in touch with one of my old neighbors, and he might have seen pictures of my house on Facebook and told my parents. I have no idea how they figured out the exact address, but my dad knew where I worked, so maybe he got it from there. As soon as I opened the door, they barged into my house. Mom and Dad congratulated me and said they were proud of me. I smiled and offered them a chair. I'm still in the process of furnishing the place, so I only have a bed, a few chairs, and a table. My parents sat down and started asking about the house deal. They found it unbelievable that I could buy a house at 35 while they were still renting. Meanwhile, my sister and her deadbeat husband were casually strolling through my house as if planning to move in. I asked them why they suddenly showed up in my life. They said, "Nothing, just checking on you." Funny, huh? They checked up on me when I needed them the least. They started updating me about their lives. Dad has hypertension, my sister has 3 kids, 14, 9 and 4. And she's pregnant again. Well, good for her. I just sat there nodding, debating whether to yell at them or politely ask them to leave. Mom asked if I was getting married or had a girlfriend. I said it's none of her business. She responded, "Why are you so cranky? Is everything all right?" I said everything was fine until they showed up. She laughed and offered to help if settling into the new house was overwhelming for me. Just then my sister announced, "I've decided we're going to take the bedroom with the attached balcony and bathroom. I'm so excited to have my own bathroom. The kids can have the other room." I flipped out and asked, "What the hell is happening here?" My sister said, "You have a 3-bedroom house and you're a single man. You don't need so much space. You used to live in a tent, so getting a bedroom is quite an upgrade for you. This house is big enough for all of us." My parents cut her off and asked her to attend to her youngest son, who was crying for attention. I looked at my parents and asked them what my sister just said. Dad explained that accommodating 7 people in a small house was getting tough. My sister's eldest son, 14, was sleeping on the couch, the middle one was with my parents, and the youngest with my sister. And now, with another baby on the way, they needed a bigger house. I screamed and Mom said, "You know you have a big house now. Can't you take your sister in?" Before she finished I yelled, "Hell no, I'm not taking anyone into my house." My sister screamed that I owed her for bringing me into this world, the same old story. "Mom and Dad would never have had you if I wasn't there. You owe me a place here. Our house is so crowded I can't even breathe." I replied, "Yes, thanks to you and thanks for bringing me into this world. Now get out." Before anyone could say anything, I asked them to leave. Dad tried his tough approach, raising his voice and saying it was my duty as the man of the house to take care of my sister. I yelled back that I had no obligation to take care of her, but as parents, they were obligated to take care of me, and they failed. He was okay with his grandson sleeping on the couch, but when I asked, he refused and threw me out. I ranted about how I survived with rodents in my employer's garage and lived in a dingy apartment for a decade, but none of them ever checked on me. Mom started sobbing and tried to hug me. I blocked her and asked them to leave. Bill said, "Man up, bro. I've lived that life for years and never complained. You have a big house and you're single. What do you need all this space for?" I gestured for him to shut up. My sister started cussing me for shouting at her husband. I said, "Well then, get out if you don't want me to knock him down." I chased them out of my house without letting them speak another word. I'm fuming with anger. They were always toxic and narcissistic, and now they've turned greedy. But I'm not 16 anymore, blindly following their orders like a puppet. If they keep pestering me, I won't hesitate to call the cops on them. Update: my sister and her junkie husband broke into my house. Some of you asked if my sister offered to pay rent. The answer is a big no. She hasn't and she can't afford rent. She and her junkie husband are freeloaders and child-making machines. They've been leeching off my parents for 12 years, and now they want to do the same to me. It's not like my parents are happy about it. I saw the frustration in their eyes during their last visit. But instead of throwing her out, they're trying to offload those lazy bumps onto me. A week after our first encounter, my mom showed up at my house again. This time she didn't beat around the bush and told me I should let my sister move in with me. I said no way. She repeated the same stuff about how difficult it was to accommodate so many people in a small house, blah blah. Still, it was a no from me. Then she tried to threaten me. I should have seen it coming. She said, "See honey, you live alone in this big house and you're gone for 12 hours a day. What if someone breaks in? If a family lives here, it would be safer for you. Plus, you'll get help with cleaning, dishes and laundry." I said, "For the last time, no and go away." I don't want any of you at my house. A few days later, one of my neighbors told me he saw a pregnant woman with a man and a young boy loitering around my property. They were peeping in through the windows, wandering around the backyard, and it seemed like they were trying to sneak in. He's an old man who sits on his front porch all afternoon. When they noticed he was watching them, they went away. He informed me as a goodwill gesture. I thanked him, gave him my number, and asked him to call me if he ever saw them again. My house wasn't equipped with cameras yet. I had intended to install them over the weekend. Who knew they would break in before then? Just 2 days later, I got a call from my elderly neighbor saying he suspected someone had broken into my house. I rushed home in a panic. He was right. My sister and Bill had broken in through the back window. She said, "We didn't have any other options. You were being a jerk and not allowing us. Now we live here, and you suck it up." I was in shock. How far she went to flaunt her entitlement. Bill came out of the room they had turned into their bedroom and said, "It was pretty smooth, huh?" Without thinking twice, I charged at Bill. My sister stepped in between, and I dragged her aside. I punched him in the face. Their 14-year-old son attacked me with a bottle, and my head started bleeding. The blow wasn't severe, and I was on the verge of blackout, but my rage kept me conscious. They all panicked at the sight of blood. My sister called my parents and told them what happened. Bill and his son started cleaning up the mess. My neighbor called the cops. My sister and Bill started apologizing and begged me to spare their son from being arrested. I said, "All of you are going down with him." The cops arrived and took my statement. My sister denied all allegations of breaking in and assaulting me. She claimed they were visiting my house, her son played a prank on me, and I accidentally slipped and hurt my head. She said I was mad at them and falsely framing them. What a liar. Meanwhile, my parents arrived and forced me to drop the charges. They all ganged up to make me look like a liar, claiming I was using the cops to settle a grudge against my sister. Thank God my neighbor stepped in and gave his statement, and based on that, the cops arrested them. They had to spend the night behind bars because my parents couldn't afford bail. The next day, they were presented for trial. I went to the hospital to get my wounds dressed. The doctor scanned it for internal injuries. I had to take a couple of days off to nurse my wounds. I pressed assault charges against them and also claimed compensation for my losses, and the court agreed that they should bear it. Meanwhile, my parents tried everything to make me drop the charges, but I threatened to sue them for planning the assault. Her son, being a minor, was dealt with according to juvenile law. He got a week in a juvenile facility, and his parents had to pay for restitution, lost wages, and medical bills. My sister and Bill were heavily fined but pleaded to trade part of it for community service. It's been a week since then, and it's been silent. I hope they've learned their lesson and stay away from me. Update 2. It looks like my parents aren't off my back yet. Yesterday, they showed up at my house again. I slammed the door in their face. They stood outside for almost an hour, requesting me to hear them out. Finally, I had to let them in. I wish I could just yell from the window and threaten them like Dad did to me 12 years ago. Anyway, I asked them why they were at my door again. They both started sobbing and said they needed my help. I said if this had anything to do with my sister, then count me out. They said it was about them. Dad said, "You see, I'm growing old and fragile. I cannot work as before. Our house hasn't been repaired in many years. Everything is falling apart." I cut him off and said, "Come to the point." He and Mom wanted to move in with me. As a responsible son, I should take them in. I should have if they were responsible parents, but they were not. I asked what would happen to their house and if they were going to terminate the lease. They said they were going to give that house to my sister. I was like, "Oh cool, you guys have taken an alternate route to exploit me. Earlier you tried to dump my sister on me, that plan failed. Now you want to pile on for one last time. My house is not up for grabs, not for anyone." They said my sister was offering to pay me rent for living in my house, which I could use to pay the mortgage. I said, I don't need her rent. She doesn't need to worry about my mortgage. She should look out for herself instead. Mom started crying that it was becoming very difficult for my sister to make ends meet. She doesn't even get proper sleep because her children sleep in the same room. I said, it's not my problem if she is mindlessly expanding her family without financial planning. They said, what can we say? You're not agreeing to anything. You don't want to take in your sister, and you won't agree to take us in either. You should at least let us move in with you. The house is too big for one person. I replied, I don't plan to remain single forever. They tried to emotionally manipulate me, insisting that I should take care of my aging parents. I screamed, karma is real. Remember how you threw me out of the house, This is what you get in return. I opened the door for them, and they left with bitter faces. I don't care what they call me, but I'm not going to be a doormat and give in to their demands. My mom tried to force a reconciliation between my sister and me, but it backfired. Now, I don't know if I want her in my life anymore. I started dating my brother's best friend when I was 16. We were together until I graduated high school when he proposed and I rejected it. There was a lot of drama, with my family asking me to reconsider because we could have a long engagement, or make a promise to reconcile. My relationship with my brother, 36, suffered for a while, but the one with my sister, 32, never recovered. She was sure my ex was the best fit for me and became unbearable when she started dating my ex's brother. My ex was invited everywhere by my siblings, even to some family holidays, but I didn't say anything since he was their friend too. That is until my sister started to push for us to get back together. My sister did everything from trying to get us on blind dates to making us share a room during holidays. No matter the occasion, my ex was invited to it. After a while I had enough and asked my parents to intervene. They were clear with my siblings and stopped inviting my ex to things or allowing him to tag along so much. It was slightly better, but while my brother backed off, my sister didn't. It all came to a crash when I met my husband during a semester abroad. He was from another university but the same country and we just clicked. It was magical for me and we got engaged after dating for a year. My family was very happy for me, except my sister. She kept insisting I was in the honeymoon phase and will grow out of it. I clearly didn't, and after many, can't express enough how many, fights and attempts to reunite me with my ex, I simply let her know if she pulled anything again I will stop talking to her. What does she do after that warning? Makes me her MOH and requests I spend all my time with the bridal party, aka my ex, and sets one of her friends as my husband's date. We didn't realize until we were at the reception and the poor girl tried to make a pass at my husband. My sister said that since we are not married it was okay to explore things with other people. I left the party and the next day spoke with my parents and brother, explained that while I won't make them choose, I will not talk to my sister ever again, and if they try to fix stuff between us I will simply cut contact with them too. My mom was devastated and tried to negotiate, but my dad and brother said they would respect my decision, and apart from 2 attempts from my mom I haven't spoken, written, or anything with my sister in the past 6 years. My sister has tried everything to reconcile with me. From gifts to tantrums, but I simply don't talk to her at all. If we are at a family event or dinner I simply act like she doesn't exist. At first she made snarky comments or tried to create drama, but since nobody backed her up she gave up. She did have a meltdown when she was informed she was invited to my wedding but would not be part of any preparation. My brother says he feels guilty for going along with it for so long, and his relationship with my ex has suffered since my ex. They still talk but they are not as close anymore. The issue. My mom's birthday was a couple of weeks ago and I finally announced we are expecting our first child. This is not the first grandchild but is the first granddaughter. Everybody was very happy except my sister. My mom noticed that and asked me for tea the other day. My sixth sense told me not to go, but I wanted to be positive. The first thing I noticed when I arrived was my sister's car. Then as I entered the door there was my sister, her husband, my ex and my ex-male. They wanted to have an intervention since my childish tactic has gone for so long. My ex said that he was just trying to be romantic but he understands I couldn't appreciate it. His mom said I was just hurting my sister for wanting the best for me and she apologized already, so I need to forgive her. I was just sending texts to my family, dad, brother, husband, and looking at my mom in disbelief. My Bill had the balls to tell me I was a hurtful person and I need to learn how to act like an adult since I'm having a baby now. Then my mom began reading a letter about how hurt she was that her daughters weren't close, how my sister was wrong but she was well intended, etc. Then my sister read her letter and began crying and telling me basically another version of what the rest did. I said nothing to anybody, just sat there until my brother arrived. He was angry beyond anything I've ever seen before. He grabbed my stuff and told them all he was really disappointed and disgusted. We went outside and sat in his car until my dad and husband arrived. By then I was just sobbing and he kept saying sorry. I am unsure what happened there, but I sent everybody, except mom, an email with my lawyer's number info attached and stated I don't wish to be contacted by any of them ever again, and if they do I will go to the police. Nobody has contacted me, but I know from my dad my mom and sister are hysterical. They told him they hope to repair things and for my sister to be able to be in my baby's life, maybe possibly being a godmother. My dad is staying with my brother at the moment. They support me but some others in the family don't. I've even had mutual friends call me since they are worried about my sister's well-being and asking me what happened since she is now going by the narrative that my husband is keeping me away from my family. I hate having my business in public, but I did go the public route and posted a long FB post about everything that happened. Sister, Bil and X are being dragged, which even if it wasn't 100% intended I feel is deserved. Now, my mom has been inconsolable, which does make me feel bad, but not as bad as she made me feel with her little intervention. I agreed to have a talk with her a couple of days ago and laid the ground rules for any possible future interaction, including therapy, family therapy, clear boundaries, no sharing information about me with my sister, and separate holidays. Most important, if she ever pulls anything like this again, she will for sure be cut off. She feels this is too much but is willing to do it. She thought it meant immediate access to baby news and it is all solved, but I told her it is a process and she needs to prove she has improved. My dad and brother refuse to talk to my sister and they keep apologizing for not stopping it earlier. We've forgiven them since they were able to move on and grow. My husband supports whatever I decide, but my MIL is unsure cutting my mom's access to her granddaughter is the way to go, but says it is ultimately my decision. I am torn about what to do with my mom. Relevant comments. Commenter: what is their logic? Like, now that you're pregnant, you should stop playing make-believe with your husband and realize your happiness ever after is with your ex. What about your baby? Your ex and his family are gonna accept her. OP: my sister claims she is not trying to get us together anymore, but that I can't take away her chance to be an aunt. She says I'm a bad sister for being close with my SILs, who are amazing people. I obviously don't believe her. My issue is what to do with my mom. Commenter: she couldn't be your best friend without you dating your ex? OP: I wish I could tell you, but I have no idea what her thought process is. My husband has the theory she is just mentally unwell. The ex: the most ridiculous and scary thing is he still has the mixtapes, CDs, I made him when we were dating. Those things are about 20 years old and he still holds on to them. Commenter: I'm kind of surprised your stalker ex, and yes I will call him that, is still in your brother's life. That said, hold firm with your mother. No timelines. She has to show she can stick to your rules. Sister needs to live with the consequences of her actions. OP: to be fair to my brother, he did start to cut him off when I told my parents I was very uncomfortable with my ex around all the time. I was living away for college but would visit my family during breaks. He also made a very big effort to make my husband feel welcome, which deteriorated his relationship with my ex even more because he felt betrayed by my brother. Nowadays my husband is one of my brother's closest friends and he only speaks with my ex when it is about our nephew or to not be rude. Commenter: you need to realize that your mom is supporting all of this. A big reason Big Sis is continuing this is because she knows your mom also thinks it's right. OP: this makes me very sad since my mom was always so nice to my husband and now I am re-evaluating their whole relationship. OP's background and culture: not Indian nor from a religious family. My parents were good, nice parents. They thought it was a romantic thing at the beginning but later realized it wasn't. They encouraged me to go to college and everything. Now I know my dad actually supported me and my mom might have just played along and have the same beliefs as my sister. My sister had this idea we would be best friends married to brothers. Update 1. The edit I wanted to post but couldn't. I want to thank you for the amount of support and advice so far. I want to give a little more info that is in my comments since there are too many for me to answer them all individually. My ex and I broke up when I was 18. He is 37 now. The reason for our breakup was that I didn't want to get married or engaged. My sister's insistence comes from the fixation of wanting the both of us to marry brothers and being best friends. My mom has always been so nice to my husband, but I am beginning to think it was all a facade, which makes me very sad. My ex has been with people since the breakup. He also has 2 kids with an ex, but he's never been married. My sister says that is a very romantic thing to do since he has only ever wanted to marry me. I should also mention his obsessive behavior is not only with me. I know from the grapevine he was very similar with the mother of his children, but now he is refocusing on me because my sister is encouraging it since she needs his help on getting back in my good graces so she can be a good aunt. My brother did start to cut him off when I told my parents I was very uncomfortable with my ex around all the time. I was living away for college but would visit my family during breaks. He also made a very big effort to make my husband feel welcome, which deteriorated his relationship with my ex even more because he felt betrayed by my brother. Nowadays my husband is one of my brother's closest friends and he only speaks with my ex when it is about our nephew, sister's son, or to not be rude. Both my parents seem to be supportive of me not wanting to be around my ex so much, but I guess only my dad was in agreement. On the day of the tea party my mom told him she was making me my favorite tea and sweets, but he couldn't stay since we would have quality time together. My dad left to go hang with my uncle since he thought it was a nice sentiment from my mom. He's very pissed off. My husband tried very hard with my sister when they met, but now he just ignores her and believes she is mentally unwell. We don't know if she is or not, still there is no excuse for how she behaves. They invited the ex and his mom because they thought it would be good for me to face the root of my issues with my sister, or at least their official version. Also, we are not Indian, not really religious. My husband and I are from the same race. There is also no wealth disparity between my ex and my husband. If there is, it would be in favor of my husband. Lastly, my CLs, both my brother's wife and husband's sisters, are enraged about the situation. My husband and his sisters will be talking with their mom about her comment. My brother and his wife are considering going NC with my mom permanently. In the meanwhile, they will not allow her to see my nephews for a bit. The more I read, the more I think I might have to go NC with my mom for the sake of my kid. My husband is heartbroken to think all their interactions were fake, but says he is even more enraged she made me cry and doubt I was a good person. I realize there are still countless conversations to have with my family about my mom, but I will definitely be going for a restraining order against my sister and the ex. The proper semi-update. The state of my family so far. I had a conversation with my mother, but she insists she knew best. I am a bad person and she will be getting grandparents' rights or even custody. I don't know what she said, but I still panicked, so we sent her a letter about it. My dad moved out definitely. He told her that he could not sign on to her terrorizing his kid. My brother and his wife also decided to go to NC. I know it seems very sudden, but I think I understood the level of despair I had after the intervention. My husband told them afterward they had to think very well about what they appreciated and to be kind and receptive to everything, but would not raise a kid on a toxic environment. Reason 3271637 Why I love my husband. My husband is very heartbroken about my mom and her fakeness. He says she will never get anything from him. That is as much as revenge goes here. My husband and sisters talked to my MIL about her comment and made her understand why it was very out of it, as many of you assume she is a very loving mom, from a loving family. My dad and brother keep apologizing for any role they played in this. My dad can't believe it went to this point. He says it is still surreal for him. Regardless, they support me no matter what and say they are willing to help me fight whatever ridiculous fight my mom or sister put up. Update 2. I want to thank the lovely messages and encouraging words. I decided to post it here so it wouldn't be deleted like the original was. Things are great and horrible at the same time, but I'm trying to remain positive about everything. My brother and his wife sat my nephews down and explained that grandma was ill and tried to hurt Auntie Diamond and the little cousin. They explained grandma would not be part of their lives anymore, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love them. It was really hard, but the kids are smart. They were also told another aunt is no longer in their life, but they don't care because they dislike her, not because of me alone, simply because she is not exactly great with them either. My mom lost it when she was informed and started claiming she had rights and she will get to see her grandchildren. My dad is looking for a permanent place but will stay with us until January, mainly due to my brother's MIL coming to visit and us having the space. He is really sad, has called divorce lawyers already, moved bank stuff, etc. He has been getting countless emails, messages and calls from my mom, but he doesn't reply to anything. The lawyer told him to not block her right now. He considered maybe forgiving her, but I got a huge spike in my blood pressure a couple days after my last post here, because she decided to come to my place with my sister. My sister had never been to my home. My mom knew I didn't want her there, but I guess that doesn't matter anymore. The cleaning lady let them in since she knows my mom and I haven't had the time to inform her she was not allowed to come in anymore. I was just coming from some errands and I saw the car. This time I didn't get in. I called all of my relatives and my SIL, husband's sister, was the one closer to me. She confronted them and told them either they leave or I call the police on them for trespassing. They left and I started feeling bad. We went to the doctor and they told me all the excitement was not good and I need to start relaxing or it would hurt the baby. My dad went home with my brother, uncle and my husband and took every single thing he could think of. My husband says my sister was there too and she kept screaming at him that he destroyed her family. My dad told my mom and sister they almost killed the baby and he also doesn't want to talk to any of them again. My sister kept sending messages to my brother, begging for help, but it did not happen. I am devastated and very sad for my nephew since he is losing so much of his family because his mother has some wacky ideas, but it is what it is. As per the custody and grandparent rights my mom wants to throw around so much, my lawyer sent her a letter stating she caused harm to my health and the baby, and if she keeps harassing me it will become an official legal matter. My brother also sent her a letter accusing her of harassing me. Both, mom and sister, have refused to go to therapy. They might be mentally ill, but with all of this coming to light it is obvious they have been in agreement for a long time. I will focus on spending the holidays with my family, being healthy and going to therapy. Update 3. Hi, I've received some requests for an update and had a little time, so decided it could be a good fit. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart from your comments, messages and every advice, because I feel we owe you for being even more paranoid than we were being. A couple people asked me what method we used to know the gender of the baby. I announced it after 20 weeks. The reason for waiting so long is we have experienced a loss in the past, which we were preparing to announce when it happened, and we wanted to be sure and have a safe feeling about the announcement. Also, we were naive enough to think it would be special for my mom. And you were right. After posting, I handed it to my husband and he read your messages, comments, and advice for some days. We swiped the house and thankfully found nothing, but felt extremely unsafe, so we went to a hotel with my dad. But then we realized there was a tracker on my fur baby's vest. He is a very small dog and gets cold a lot, so he has a funny vest. Never in a million years would I have thought of looking there. But we discovered the tracker when my dad walked him around the hotel area and my sister came and asked him about me and reconciliation. I was really upset, so we decided to move. Thankfully we can afford it. We are renting at the moment and also renting out our place, so it is not just empty. I used to love that house, but now I feel it is ruined and tainted somehow. Sadly, my parents' house feels the same, and not only for me. We all, brother, husband, dad, SIL, and even my husband's family, changed our numbers, got new electronics and notified employers, friends and police. We also started therapy and family therapy. My dad and brother feel extreme guilt over the situation, even if I've truly forgiven them, but we are healing as a unit. My sister and mom insist they are not wrong and they don't need therapy. My dad made a new will in which my sister's son gets a trust fund and some inheritance, but my sister gets a token amount. He is truly done with her. I was feeling bad for her, but I decided to focus my energy on my baby. She is here and we are blessed. It is not the experience I thought of since my mom is not around me anymore, but so many friends and family members have truly surprised us. By the end we were so paranoid we started testing some people we were unsure of, telling them I was going into labor. It worked like a charm. We discovered who was still feeding info to my mom and sister and cut them out. The rest understood when we explained the reasoning. My ex, whom my friends now call Bates, went around saying the baby was his cause. We've been having a torrid affair due to my undying love for him. Nobody believes him anymore, but it made my husband contact Bates's employer and tell him about all the craziness. Long story short, he was put on a suspension pending internal reviewing. I am almost positive he will be fired since they have asked us for more and more info and they seem really apologetic. My mom has tried to find us, but all the people that know of our location have gone NC with her. My dad's lawyer sent her a letter stating that due to her instability all correspondence will be through lawyers now. It has been us and my dad because I felt so bad for him being alone. He has promised he will be fine and nothing is my fault, but I still feel awful. He has been the best babysitter, feeder, diaper changer in the universe. My nephews are loving as always, and my dad even got a visit with my sister's son. It came about because she kept making videos threatening to hurt herself if my husband didn't stop alienating her family, so my dad emailed her about seeing her son and told her he would call the police about her threats, so that seems to have stopped it. Lastly, someone brought up Bates's false hope. It can't be further from the truth. I spent years uncomfortable because I thought he would move on. Then after I spoke up and then met my husband, I spent such a long time fighting my sister about it. I had a very long engagement, which is why I married after my sister. I still love my mom and sister, but I choose a healthy life for me and my family over that love. I have discovered a lot of loyalty, love and compassion through this whole thing. As strange as it may seem, I feel lucky it all exploded. Hopefully it is not much of a ramble. Big hugs from me. Update 4. We officially moved into a new house, with my dad moving into the guest house. We had many discussions both in and outside therapy, and we decided that while it would be good for him to be with us, we all still need our space. We are still renting out the old place and will be deciding what to do later. My dad has the grandchildren all together about 3 times a week now. He still has to see my sister's kid separately since she refused to let him take the kid unless she knew where he lived, which to be fair is a normal thing, but considering she is crazy, we don't want her close. My mom complained to the lawyers about how unfair it is. My dad still gets to see all grandchildren, but there is nothing she can do about it. About a month ago my dad told me he had a confession and my stomach started hurting. Dear reader, he pays for my nephew's, sister's kids' schooling and babysitting, which is why she still allows him to see him. He felt so guilty for hiding it and didn't want to keep secrets. I assured him it was nothing wrong and to please don't feel bad. On Mother's Day, my dad got an email with a link to an Instagram account in which they made a sad video about my mom and how most of her family has abandoned her and how much of a saint my sister is for being there for her. It was really pathetic and enraged me, but I just sent it to the lawyer. Dad officially filed for divorce in May and the process is still ongoing. My mom insists he is wrong, but my dad said he'd rather drink bleach than go back to her, so I think that is final. My brother and husband took my dad out for Father's Day and had a blast. My sister posted many things that day, but they managed to block my dad from even learning about it because we wanted him to enjoy it. They also did a camping trip with the kids, aka went to a hotel, got a suite and put a tent in the middle area for the kids and a little tippy for the baby. Honestly, having a baby is one of the best things that have happened to me, and seeing my husband being the amazing father I knew he would be makes me so happy. It is tiring, but we have so much support. I feel grateful beyond anything because I have my rocks on my side. My SILs and I now get to have a little calendar on sharing things. All the kids get to do things that are age appropriate, and if they want to. We want to let them all know they do not need to hang out with people they dislike and their voices matter. Right now they are all obsessed with baby and say they are her protectors. And we get little get-togethers, brunch, etc. Honestly, having family time is now a pleasure and not a headache without my sister there. I know it is wrong to say, but she just sucks the positivity out of the room. My MIL also loves having time with the baby and stays in the guest room about once a week. She asked politely and said she didn't want to take the baby for sleepovers or anything. I feel respected and heard by her, and yes, have broken down sometimes because I miss my mom a lot. I miss the mom I had or thought I had, not the one that told me I would be a terrible mother or was a hateful woman. My therapist says it's a marathon and to focus on the good. Speaking about good, Bates was terminated. Not only that, but his reputation in his industry was not only damaged but nuclear level damaged. So was his brother's, but because Bill is not in an industry that cares as much about reputation, he still has his job as far as I know. Bates sent me a 12-page, double-sided, seemingly single-space letter about how hurt he is. I am denying him what's his, and my husband is so threatened by him that he had to go and destroy him professionally because he would not be able to destroy anything else. I said it seemed because I didn't read it, my lawyer did and gave me a summary. I also heard from the grapevine, no, I don't ask people, they just tell me since they know he is stalking me, that the mother of his children moved and he didn't even care and said it was for the best. This man doesn't even care about his kids and wants to play with baby and me. Sadly, he won't be homeless or anything because mommy already let him move back in with her, so I doubt he will learn anything from this. Not the flashiest of updates, but just what is. Oh, and my husband burnt or donated every single item given to him by my mom or my parents with my dad's blessing. He says life is too short to give her space in his life even with memories. Relevant comments. Commenter, I am really glad you are coming through all that with the good bits of your family very intact. I don't really get the firing part. I get Bates is a bad dude, but has he ever done anything that has relevance or a connection to his work? OP. Without giving up his industry, it is a very close-knit one, and when you get a bad reputation it sunks you. He was thought of as a nice but distant nice feminist single dad before this. He even told some co-workers I was with him for longer than we were. Commenter. I am reading your full post from the best of Reddit at 1:30 a.m. from my home in India, and I have respect and sorry for what you've faced, and I hope your child grows to be healthy and nice as you both. Also, I hope this whole fiasco is over soon and you can be back with your mother after her ex-fantasy is over. Respect for you. Keep fighting, OP. That is a lovely sentiment, but I will never talk to my mom again. I miss her a lot. I cry a lot. She is not the person I thought she was, and the baby deserves the best family we can get, and my mom is not part of it. It breaks my heart, but I need to protect the baby. OP comments on the second Boru post. I came to check the comments since Tikalitas told me the sub was full of nice people but so many snarky ones. I won't give more identifying info, but Bates is supposed to work with vulnerable people, which is why my husband contacted their employer. As for the money thing, we all come from well-to-do backgrounds for saying something, so I never thought he would suffer for money, but he also will never learn anything. New update. I have some updates for you, but first I want to thank you for all your comments and messages. Every time I log into this account I am bombarded by mostly positive things, and I appreciate it a lot. I am unsure if anybody will read this, but for those who want updates they are mainly good ones. With that out of the way, let's get to it. My parents are divorced now, after many fights and tantrums from my mother. She kept the house and got a bulk payment, but that is it. My dad is like a new man and we are all so happy for him. A little throwback. When all the drama happened we did not fire our cleaning lady. This is a woman that had been helping my husband's family for decades, and I was very stressed out about her being out of work because of what my crazy family did. Also, we are not slobs and she is not polishing floors on her knees or anything like that. In any case, my dad spoke with her and told her she was on paid vacation and until we had a new house to please wait for us if she wanted, but she was absolutely not fired. She was really happy about it and so was her family. My dad started to get food and stuff from them from time to time because they were so thankful about what he was doing for them. Well, she has a sister, who owns her own nail salon, and my dad is dating her now. She is a very lovely woman and has grown children, so she understands the dynamics happening sometimes. He has been very clear he is not moving or marrying and she is pleased with that because she likes her independence. My mother nearly had a stroke when she heard about his new relationship and kept saying it was a late midlife crisis and he had to resort to being a sugar daddy. This is obviously what I heard because I don't have any contact with her. But last I heard she is having a hard time. She is struggling because she was never good at budgeting and relied on my dad to put a stop on ridiculous purchases. My sister is also struggling because my dad is not helping her with money anymore. You'll see, he was willing to keep helping for the sake of my nephew, but then things got very rough. My nephew started calling my kid an affair baby, how she is not with her real dad, called my other nephews delusional, and during a birthday party he even pushed one of my nephews on my husband's side saying they were not my kid's cousins, only he was. The kids were perplexed and so confused but immediately told an adult about it. My dad spoke with him but he kept repeating it. He spoke with my sister and she said she could do nothing to prevent a kid from telling the truth, and didn't all kids always tell the truth? He told her until there is a chance he is cutting them off. She panicked and cried, but she is also super stubborn, so now my nephew goes to public school because my husband made my dad cut them off. Bates, well, he is still unemployed. I know I was cryptic about it, but he was in an industry related to vulnerable women and some of it related to stalking. Irony much, that's why he was fired. The organization he was in didn't want this to splash on them. I have received 2 more very long handwritten rambling letters from him, and since he only has my lawyer's address, guess who has the honor of receiving, reading and file those ramblings? I love my lawyer and he is a champ. Apart from that and the gossip, I have not had bad issues related to him except for one. I was at the grocery store and a random woman came over to ask if my kid was Bates's baby. I was speechless and shocked. I asked her what she was on and she said he has a photo of us on his profile and I should be ashamed of myself for hurting such a good man. Turns out he is still going by the narrative my kid is his and I loved him so much. That is all old news, but at the end what shocked me the most was the pic comment. This is not a photo that has been public or anything like that. It was sent to a family group once and that is it. I told my husband immediately and he was enraged but composed, so we decided to smoke out the rat. Long story short, it was my dad's 2 sisters feeding info to my mom. My dad was so disappointed but also had no doubts cutting them off. They are still begging him to talk to them again. My brother and his family are doing great. We see them a lot and have been on some family holidays since the last update. They are also in NC with my mom and sister. My SIL is actually super happy about it because it turns out she was not a fan of our mom but kept the peace. My in-laws keep being lovely as well. We allow Mill overnight babysitting now too and she is over the moon with it. Sometimes she has all her grandchildren under the same roof and they are all delighted to be with her. She is a former flight attendant, so their favorite game is to pretend to be an airplane. Overall they love her and we know she is good without kids, so we do not worry. She had to make her socials private because my mom kept stalking her. I am sure she is extremely jealous, but she made her own bed. Lastly, my husband keeps me sane whenever little things come up. We are thinking if we should have another baby or maybe adopt one. We are still undecided. We have a great support system and the privilege to have these conversations. I still miss my mom a lot. I sometimes cry when I realize there are milestones I can no longer share with her, but she is a bad person and the safety of my family matters more. Last fun fact, this Father's Day they actually went camping. It went great apart from the mosquito bites and some ill-placed sunburns. Relevant comments. Could Bates ask for a paternity test? Report the photo. We already did a paternity test, not with Bates but with my husband. We never ever had doubts obviously, but my lawyer suggested having it done in case he claimed it. The photo incident was a while back and we already took it off his Facebook page. I didn't want to go further because I don't want to see him again. Editor's note. Well aware I wrote the wrong years when labeling, was focused more on trying to get the time between posts correct. That's fixed now, thanks to those of you who were polite about it. Am I the asshole for telling my husband that I will divorce him tomorrow because he doesn't clean anymore? I'm at my wit's end. Everything changed after marriage and I couldn't tell you why. Our biggest problem is cleaning. My husband used to clean up after himself, but after marriage he just completely stopped with no warning. We were dating for 3 years, engaged for 1, and now freshly married. We're 28 and 29. After we got married my husband stopped cleaning. He wouldn't pick up after himself, wouldn't do his agreed upon chores, and suddenly became a slob. It was like he's been intentionally dirtying things up. I stopped doing all of my housework out of protest a month into our marriage, and I now live in complete and utter filth. I'm rarely home due to the mess. I live part-time with my sister at this point, and he doesn't even care. I come home only to sleep at night, and sometimes I don't even come home at all. It's like we aren't even married anymore, and it's draining my mental health to the point where I've had multiple breakdowns this month. I'm completely over it. I wanted to get married, but this is not the man I married. I would much rather be home where I belong, but I'm not a maid. The mess is as follows. Wet food in the sink from him throwing his plate, finished or not, in there. Bugs, garbage littered everywhere, puddles of mystery substances. The trash is never taken out. All of his laundry is dirty, clothes unfolded, crumbs galore, takeout everywhere since he won't cook. Dishes piled to the skies. I can guarantee you there's more, but I can't describe it right. It's like he's a toddler. It's exactly like mommy isn't cleaning up, so he's tornadoing through our house and not caring. Before he would scrape his plate, rinse it, then leave it. He would take the trash outside and take the cans to the curb. He'd sweep, vacuum, occasionally do laundry, and he would never eat in the bed. Now he does it all. A few hours ago I told him that if he doesn't clean up tonight, then I'm divorcing him tomorrow. I said if I don't see some progress on the house, then we're over. He told me that I'm being an asshole for no reason and that cleaning is no longer his job. I nearly popped a fucking blood vessel. We did not decide on that. He's telling me that I'm throwing everything away over pride and that all new marriages go through this transition. Bull fucking shit. He told his mom, and she called me not too long ago and told me that I need to calm down and reconcile. I really love my MIL, and she's one of the most level-headed people I know, hence the reason I'm writing this post. She's making me wonder if divorce is too far because it's only a mess, but it's a mess. She told me that we can reach a compromise, and that we need to take a breather and talk about it all, but I truthfully do not want to. She reminded me of our good times and that life won't always be the way it is now, but I'm feeling incredibly skeptical. I cannot stand filth, and I can't live like this even if it's for him. Am I the asshole? Edit. After writing a long comment, I'm done. I know I just posted, but I truly am done. My mill made me second guess myself, but all I needed was to think about it all and hear an outside opinion, even if it's just one. He fooled me for 4 years, and marriage is not trapping me. He used to clean up after himself and be the most wonderful partner. It's a real shame that he showed his true colors after we paid so much for our wedding. I'm not a maid and he's not a toddler. Even toddlers are more responsible and respectful than him.
My fiance's sister hates me for being his second wife and spreads false rumors. Can I mend family ties and create harmony? Despite her actions? Hello, I'm 26 years old. My fiance, Kyle, who is 34, and I are preparing for our upcoming wedding and are excitedly expecting our first child. We have been in a relationship for 7 months, and the pregnancy was an unexpected surprise for us both. From the beginning of our relationship, we have faced challenges with Kyle's sister Bella, who is 36 years old. Kyle and I were introduced by his younger brother Victor, who is 27, during the time Kyle was going through a divorce. He had been separated from his wife for over a year, and I had just ended a long-term relationship. We started talking and eventually became friends with benefits, as neither of us was looking for a serious relationship immediately. At that time, Kyle had begun treating his depression, and I had recently changed my medication for anxiety. Several months later, Kyle's divorce was finalized. 2 months after that, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I accepted. About a month into our relationship, Kyle organized a family dinner since I already knew his brother and mother. It was at this dinner that I met Bella. Unfortunately, Bella started harassing me in various ways, criticizing my accent, clothes and hair, trying to make me look foolish in a passive-aggressive manner. Despite Kyle, his brother, and his mother's efforts to defend me, Bella became offended and left the dinner early. Since then, Kyle and I have maintained minimal contact with Bella. She remains best friends with Kyle's ex-wife and, being the control freak that she is, believes Kyle should not have divorced his ex. To me, this was incredibly bizarre. For months, she claimed that I was Kyle's affair partner and the reason for his divorce. She spread this false information to everyone in our social circle, and it eventually reached us, which was utterly ridiculous. Kyle ended his marriage due to personal issues, with no infidelity involved. We did not even know each other when he began the divorce process, and I was still with my ex at the time. Despite our denials, this rumor persisted for about 4 months, She even spread the rumor to their extended family, and it eventually reached my grandparents. The situation became so complicated that Kyle's mother, a woman of impeccable reputation, had to refute the lies her daughter had created. Following this, we decided to cut Bella off completely, avoiding any places where she might be. Despite this, she continues to spread lies about me, claiming that I cheated on my ex. He actually cheated on me. That I told Kyle to cut off his ex completely. I never commented on his relationship with his ex. And that I wanted to be with Victor. His long-term girlfriend is my best friend. She calls me promiscuous and accuses me of being after Kyle's family money. We are in similar financial situations. The worst thing she said about me was that if even my mother abandoned me, no man would not abandon me. My mother has schizophrenia and borderline personality disorder. My father divorced her after she stopped treatment and tried to kill me, and yes, she abandoned me after that. I am pregnant, and we recently discovered the news. Although I am not yet 12 weeks along, Kyle shared the news with his brother and best friend. Unfortunately, his best friend told his wife, who then informed Bella. Bella, who often hosts events, made sure her friends told Kyle's ex-wife about my pregnancy. Kyle did not want children before, and now Bella and Kyle's ex are spreading rumors that I am just a rebound and that my relationship with Kyle will not last. They claim that once Kyle's ex finds someone new, Kyle will return to her. This has made me fear that their claims might be true. I am at my wit's end and completely exhausted. Despite Kyle and I having minimal contact with his family, Bella's harassment does not stop. She wants me gone and for Kyle to leave me. All I truly want is for my baby to grow up in a healthy environment. I do not want a broken home like the one I had, but this petty woman will not even give me a chance. I am not a home-wrecking monster. I simply fell in love with someone who loves me back. So, how do I deal with this? What should I do? I don't want to cause more trouble. I don't want to be what she says I am. Relevant comments. First of all, it is way past time to hire an attorney to send Bella a cease and desist letter. You have a case for slander, so get the law involved. OP. I feel like I would be breaking the family if I did that. Secondly, you should get some therapy because that feeling is not sensible given the circumstances. It indicates that you have some things to work through on your side. You are completely a victim in this situation, and the only person breaking the family is the one viciously attacking you and spreading horrible lies about you. You need to start learning how to stand up for yourself, or people will continue to walk all over you. Speak to a professional so that you can seek justice for yourself, and not just continue to allow yourself to be abused. OP. I know. I am a people pleaser, and I always want to see others well, even if it costs me a lot. But this has been hurting me and my husband. I am going back to therapy. I stopped going a few months ago, but I do not think I am well at the moment. June 14, 2024, one day later. I am 26 years old and engaged, with a fairly recent relationship, and we are expecting a baby, 9 weeks along. Due to the pregnancy, I had to switch my medication for generalized anxiety disorder on my doctor's advice. My crazy sister-in-law has been making my life miserable. Following a rumor spread by her, everyone is calling me a rebound, and I am starting to believe it myself. I have never been the other woman, but I met my future husband in person during his divorce, and we got involved. Despite this, it feels like I destroyed his 12-year marriage, like I am some homewrecker who ruined everything. His ex-wife is beautiful, elegant, has everything figured out, and she is one of the best in her field. How can I not feel insecure? I do not know how I did not feel insecure before. He has a career, is financially stable, and has everything sorted out, while I am a mess. I want to be a pediatrician, but I do not know how to achieve that now that I am pregnant. I do not know if I should drop out of medical school, as I do not have everything together. I would never marry someone like me, let alone start a family. Why would anyone have a child with me? My mother has borderline personality disorder and schizophrenia. She almost killed me when I was 4, then ran off and never talked to me again. What if I turn out like her? I am scared every day of getting postpartum depression and not being able to love or care for my baby, afraid that I might try to hurt him. Sometimes I think it would be better to give my baby to my fiance, and maybe he could raise him with his ex-wife. They would be the perfect family, and I could disappear like my mother did. Then I hate myself for thinking that because I love my fiance and my baby. I hate myself because I cannot tell my fiance this. I'm scared of being a rebound and him realizing I am just that, and that he does not want me anymore, not me or the baby. Or worse, he will take my baby and go back to his ex-wife. I never felt like this before. I have always been anxious, but never this insecure. I do not know what is happening to me. Relevant comments. OP on why her fiancé got a divorce. It's kinda complicated because it's basically about my fiancé's mental health. He told me he married her because it was the right thing to do, not because he loved her. They'd known each other forever and ended up getting married really young. It took him a long time to realize this because he was dealing with depression and thought that lack of feeling was just part of being depressed. During his treatment he figured out he didn't love his ex, that he was just going through the motions to meet his dad's expectations. He had a really abusive relationship with his dad. He thought it was only fair to both him and his ex to ask for a divorce. OP on the timeline of her relationship with her fiancé. We've been officially together for 8 months, and a year in total. We talked about marriage when we started living together, but it was a plan for a year from then. I found out about the pregnancy while doing some tests, and then he proposed because it was already in our plans, but the pregnancy just wasn't. He was married for 12 years, but I think he was with his ex for like 16 years. July 16, 2024, a month since previous post. My sister-in-law sent me a peace offering, but it has caused arguments in my relationship. How can I manage this type of family conflict? Hello everyone, I posted here some time ago, and your advice helped me rethink past situations. Now I need guidance on my current dilemma. I have a terrible relationship with my sister-in-law. She is best friends with my fiance's ex and despises me for ruining her best friend's life. There was never any cheating or flirting while my fiance was with his ex. The situation escalated to the point where I had to contact a lawyer to stop her harassment and verbal abuse. After the cease and desist letter, she was quiet for a while. Last weekend she sent me a box with gifts like drinks, food and some makeup, plus an invitation to be one of her bridesmaids. She wrote a long letter asking if I would accept this honor as an apology for everything she did. The problem is, I'm actually considering accepting to see if we can at least coexist without pointless fights. On Saturday night, I showed the invite to my fiancé and said I was thinking about it, and it led to a huge argument. My fiancé holds a big grudge against his sister and really doesn't want to talk to her ever again. But I want our baby to grow up in a big happy family, even if it means making some sacrifices. He said he wasn't invited to be a groomsman and thinks it's just an excuse for sister-in-law to call me a bitch. Kyle ended up saying he's tired of my naivety because it always ends up hurting us since I assume the best of people. I went to my stepmom's after the fight and didn't know what to do. I came back home Sunday night after getting advice from my dad and stepmom. I tried to ignore it and move on, but just the fact that she sent something caused a huge fight between my fiancé and me. I want to resolve this in the best way possible. I'm starting my second trimester and everything feels more difficult and exhausting. Kyle and I have been exhausted lately, and my pregnancy has not been easy. We are working extra hours, dealing with the stress of impending parenthood and marriage. I do not want our different approaches to handling these issues to create problems between us. I truly want to establish a space where our baby can visit their grandmother peacefully, even if my sister-in-law is present. However, my fiancé is prepared to cut off contact with his mother if necessary. How can I navigate this situation? Edit. Some people here have been calling me toxic and suggesting my fiancé should leave me. I know I made mistakes, but I love him with all my heart. I am going to apologize as soon as he gets home. We have never fought like this before, and I did not realize I had done something so wrong. I never intended to hurt him or prioritize anyone over him. I just thought I could make things work, because I never had a typical family, and I feel like I ruined what he had with his family by being with him. Sorry to everyone who's disgusted by me. If he wants to break up, I'll leave without complaining. I feel a tightness in my chest and sick to my stomach thinking I hurt someone I love. Relevant comments. More information on the family from OP. We always have dinner with his younger brother and his girlfriend because I have been friends with them for a long time. However, his mother refuses to come unless my sister-in-law is invited, so she never shows up. She visited me once to check on me and the baby, But he seems sad when he talks about it because they had this tradition for years. He never said I am the problem, but it feels like everything changed when I came along. It feels as though if it were any other woman with him, it would not be this way. Firstly, you absolutely should not accept. If you reach the point where you had to issue a cease and desist order against this person, you need to remain no contact. People like this do not change. This is definitely a trap, and you would be foolish to fall for it. Moreover, people need to understand that asking OP to be her bridesmaid was a violation of a cease and desist order. Stop telling her to respond. She absolutely should not respond. Secondly, you need to let go of your dreams of a big happy family. You should honor your husband's wishes, and follow his lead when it comes to his sister. Trying to build a relationship with her will only lead to problems between you and your husband. She is toxic and cannot be trusted. Move on. Additionally, sometimes family consists of the people who are always there for us, rather than those connected by blood. OP's comments after reading others' replies. Reading the comments made me realize how blind I have been about everything. My sister-in-law's apology was everything I wanted, hoping it would get me accepted into the family and make everything better. I never wanted to disrespect my fiance or his boundaries with his family. He misses the family gatherings on weekends with his mom, brother, sister, and in-laws, and I feel like I have ruined everything and just wanted to fix things. I love him so much and just want a good pregnancy experience. Yes, I am anxious, had to adjust my medication for the pregnancy, and that plus hormones has made everything feel strange. I'm going to talk to my fiance and probably my lawyer about the apology letter to see if anything can be done. I do not want to deal with any more harassment. I went to my parents' place because a lot of hurtful things were said, and I needed some space, and so did he. Update, July 19, 2024. 3 days later. My insane sister-in-law sent me a peace offer that it's causing arguments in my relationship. How to deal with this type of conflict in the family. Hello everyone. I have some great news. I am going to be a mother to a baby boy. I like the names Lestat and Beau, and my fiancé likes Theodore and Gustav. I have to admit, I am really loving the name Theodore as well. I want to thank you all and clarify a few things. Thanks for the advice. Some of it hurt when I first posted, but all of it was helpful in some way. First off, I'm not a spoiled and childish girl forcing my will on my fiancé. His sister has always had problems with me, not with him. So I thought it was something I had to handle. But as you all said, she's his sister and they need to deal with it or not. And yes, I'm an extremely anxious person who's been in therapy for years. I suffered abuse from my mother. My only family growing up was my dad. When my dad finally returned to his hometown, and we could have a family beyond the two of us, I was SA'd by someone trusted by that family. I've been working on this for a long time, but many may not understand how much this has impacted my pregnancy and choices lately. It feels like the problem is me, that I don't deserve love and family, and I'm so scared my son will have a similar experience that I can't stop thinking about it. But as many of you said, my family now is me, my baby, and my husband. I also have my dad, stepmom, grandparents, little brother, brother-in-law Victor, and friends by my side. So, the real update. The night I posted I talked to my husband. He came home late from a shift and then went out drinking with Victor. I apologize for meddling in his relationship with his sister, for thinking I knew her better than he did, and for causing unnecessary conflict. I also apologized for putting the fantasy of a big happy family above his feelings. I was shocked by his reaction because he cried, and he's usually very stoic. He apologized for saying he was tired of me and said it wasn't true at all, but it's hard to see the person you love most putting themselves in a position that hurts them just to please someone extremely narcissistic. We apologized and spent the rest of the night talking. I asked if he needed a break from me because many of you said he should leave me, and he said that never crossed his mind, which was a huge relief. I had already imagined packing up to go to my parents' house. We decided to politely decline the invitation, but my fiancé took a day off to handle the situation with his family. I didn't go because it's too stressful, and I'm still in the early stages of pregnancy with 5-6 months to go. So, what came out of the family discussion? It turns out my mother-in-law was behind the invitation, She told my fiance that she would not attend the wedding or pay for it if the whole family was not invited and that my sister-in-law should face the consequences of her actions. While my sister-in-law could afford the wedding herself, it would be a significant hit to her savings, because it is going to be extremely expensive. Moreover, having their mother not attend would be problematic since my sister-in-law is a vice president at her parents' company, and many important clients will be at the wedding. She needs to maintain appearances. Therefore, my sister-in-law thought that inviting me as a bridesmaid and writing a heartfelt note would soften me up. To add to this, my fiance's ex would be her maid of honor, and my fiance was not asked to be a groomsman because the ex did not want to see him with me. He would have been invited as a regular guest. As a result, my mother-in-law is no longer paying for the wedding, but she will attend. My fiance, Victor, and his fiancée and I will not go to the wedding. Now I am receiving messages from unknown numbers calling me petty, because my sister-in-law was going to honor me at her wedding, and I ruined her dream wedding. It is amusing because this is a 36-year-old woman fighting with me because she wanted my fiancé to marry her best friend. She cannot get over a divorce that is not even hers, so good luck to her fiancé. I have realized she will never directly attack her brother because of their mother, so she targets me to get to him. Other issues have arisen, and we are planning to distance ourselves further from her, especially with the baby on the way. My brother-in-law mentioned that she has fertility issues and had a mental breakdown when she found out we were expecting. He said my sister-in-law seems to be jealous that we got pregnant so soon into our relationship. She had dreams of giving the first grandchild to the family since she is the oldest. Who knew a surprise baby could cause so much chaos? Thanks to everyone for listening and sharing your experiences. See you. Okay, no baby called Lestat, you won. I sent a message to Kyle about giving up on the name. He is the happiest man right now. Relevant comments. One person suggested not naming OP's child Lestat. Another advised definitely avoiding the name Lestat, calling it a tragedy, not a tragedy. Someone shared that they have a son named Theodore, whom they call Theo. They added that if you care about a random internet stranger's opinion, that is their vote. They also appreciated that you and your partner had an adult discussion, noting that many problems brought to Reddit can be solved through actual conversations. When discussions fail, then more permanent solutions need to be considered. Another recommended responding to any messages from unknown numbers with, "LOL, I know. It's so awesome," guaranteeing to annoy whoever is sending them. They also advised against choosing strange Dracula names. One commenter expressed gladness that you resolved this issue for now and recommended Theodore, though they admitted bias since their 3-year-old son is named Theo. They also pointed out your sister-in-law's mockery of your accent and asked if you are from a different race or ethnicity. If so, they speculated that she might be racist as well as crazy. OP. I guess so. English is not my first language, and I love my native language and am proud to speak with an accent. But she is weird. I am white, so she always made fun of my accent and stereotypes about my country. With my brother-in-law's fiancé, it was even weirder because she is Chinese and adopted. Once my sister-in-law said something like, "Oh my God, your people always put kids up for adoption. It is always subtle xenophobia." Another commenter urged you not to name your child Lestat, mentioning that even Buffy the Vampire Slayer thinks that name is lame. They also pointed out that the idea of a big happy family is a lie created by naive people. Even with a large happy family, you will encounter conflict. How you respond to that conflict is what keeps families together. They compared your sister-in-law to someone carrying a purse full of grenades with the pins pulled out. They said that the wedding invitation might as well have had a lit cartoon fuse attached and that the only way to win is not to engage. As for the his sister, his problem responses you received, they noted that the relationship advice subreddit overlaps a lot with the Just Know network. They bring their baggage here, including a strange relational order where each partner deals exclusively with their own family. That is not how life works. Life is not a math class word problem. They wish that the Just Know network would keep their strategies in their own subreddit. Gray rock is helpful, but grow a shiny spine is not. In my opinion, Bella invited OP to be a bridesmaid not out of genuine affection or reconciliation, but for strategic reasons. Firstly, Bella holds a significant position as a vice president at her parents' company, and maintaining a good image during the wedding, which will host many important clients, is crucial. By inviting OP, Bella can appear more magnanimous and harmonious, which reflects well on her professionally. Secondly, Bella's mother stated that she would not attend the wedding unless the entire family was invited, and that Bella needed to face the consequences of her actions. To ensure her mother's presence and support, Bella had to extend an olive branch to OP. Lastly, Bella likely wanted to appease her mother, who might have influence over the financial support for the wedding. Inviting OP could be seen as a gesture to gain favor and ensure the wedding proceeds smoothly. Overall, Bella's invitation seems more like a tactical move to maintain appearances and secure familial and financial support rather than a genuine attempt to reconcile with OP. What about you? Please comment below to let me know your thoughts on this issue, or other more interesting issues in the story above.
Am I the asshole for being upset that my wife frequently mentions Trump in our family prayers, even during grace before meals and bedtime prayers? Sounds a bit weird, but let me explain. I, 32, am a politically neutral guy. My wife, 25, is not. She is pretty hardcore Make America Great Again, and has been since 2016 or whenever the last election was. She is pretty vocal on Facebook about her views and sometimes says some scary things. One time she asked my coworker to his face if he was documented. We literally grew up together in the Midwest, laughing out loud. Anyway, I usually let it slide because it's not hurting me. Like I said, I'm politically neutral. Last month though, she was getting my son, 5, to bed one night, and after reading to him she did a prayer before bed. Normal stuff like, please pray for mommy, daddy, grandpa, and Trump. When I heard her say that, I was confused why she was praying for just a guy who isn't in our family. I asked her about it really politely and she went off on me about how he is persecuted and needs prayers to win the election and fend off the enemy and whatever. Again, I let it go because I normally wouldn't care. But now she seems like she is doing this to spite me. Even during the blessing before a meal she adds, and bless Trump, amen, really fast before I can argue. Last night was the worst one though. My dad, 77, had a small stroke and went to the hospital overnight. After I told her and my son, I did a small prayer for him. Of course, before I said amen, my wife added, and bless Trump. Well, this time I got mad. I told her she should keep him out of our family prayers and that this is our personal connection with God she is messing with by bringing in some weird old politician. Suffice it to say, she hasn't talked to me since. Am I really in the wrong here? Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like it's gone too far. Am I the asshole? Top comments. Comment 1, damn. So you married a general asshole and now you're upset she's being an asshole to you specifically. You're not the asshole for asking your wife to not be petty when your father is in the hospital and you're feeling scared, but also, you chose the bed you're lying in. You're just starting to realize politics impacts all eventually. Comment 2. I let it slide because it's not hurting me. I can tell you that this political disconnect would be a deal breaker for me. And she's about to create another Make America Great Again supporter right under your nose. And you're okay with that? Forget that. Comment 3. Honestly, your wife openly being racist by asking a coworker if he's documented and you not putting your foot down right there does not sound like you're politically neutral. You allowed that behavior and just let it slide. That's not good, mate. You're not the asshole for being upset with your wife bringing Trump into your prayer over family, what the F, but you need to have a long talk with her about her general behavior and her comments, aside from just this latest issue. Comment 4. You're literally how the Nazis happened. It doesn't affect me, just everyone else, so I'm cool with it. Your wife is either a gullible moron who went down the wrong internet rabbit hole or is a fascist. I know people like to throw that word around a lot, but that's because they don't know what it means. But what we're seeing in the States and in the world in general is a scary march towards authoritarianism that is anathema to the free world. I'd take my kid and run, but hey, it doesn't affect you, right? Like, she was racist to your boyhood friend's face. Update. So I mentioned in my previous post that my dad suffered from a small stroke the night before. Well, the small stroke was just the tip of the iceberg. Today my dad suffered a major stroke in the hospital and passed away last night. My whole family is devastated, including my wife. When I said a prayer over him, she did not say anything about Trump and was very respectful. After we got home from the hospital, I messed up. We were getting ready for bed and I thanked her. She asked for what, and I said for not bringing up Trump during the prayer for my dad. She immediately got mad at me about why I thought she was such a terrible person who would do something like that. I said she literally did it when we first found out he had a small stroke, and she said to me that it was before she knew it was that serious. I said that it was my dad, and of course it was serious to me. Then I really messed up and showed her the post I made yesterday to try to get her to understand. She read through all the comments and got even more mad at everything, of course. Long story short, she drove off to her friend's house and left me having to deal with my son and without a car. Later, she made this huge Facebook post about me and how I'm a terrible person. She said I made her drop out of college when I met her as a freshman, in college, and forced her to start a family with me. We met when we were 18 or older and the kid was her idea, but whatever. I assume she got this idea from some of the comments about the age difference between us, so thanks. And then of course she says that I'm against her and her beliefs and all the usual about Trump. I may update if something else happens, but whatever. Thanks to some of you for actually trying to help. I could ignore calling me a troll, but apparently I'm a bad person for being politically neutral and basically a Nazi. I am not choosing a side on purpose to have less conflict because if you can't tell, both sides are what caused the conflict. My dad died and my wife drove off and won't talk to me, but who cares because apparently I'm a troll/Nazi/groomer or whatever. Relevant comments. Comment 1, I'm not going to address the political donkey or the elephant in the room. What I'm going to comment on is your wife's total lack of compassion and grace. Even if she had been justified in her anger and hurt, it was totally out of bounds to put you through that the night your father died. That is a hard issue way beyond politics. Comment 2, sorry about your dad. Beyond your wife's troubling views about a guy who said he wants to be a dictator, her leaving you alone right after your father died is particularly troubling. Not the asshole. Comment 3, so your dad died and the next day she treats you like shit over Trump. And left you stuck with a kid and no car. You are not the asshole, but her asshole issues have more issues than a newspaper. Comment 4, my dude, both sides are not the same. Your wife is a victim of a toxic cult of personality, and you and your family are victims as well. It's not healthy to worship an individual like she does. And inferring from your previous post, as Christians you should be very wary of such a person. Liberals, progressives, and regular old Democrats aren't even the same thing, but none of them really adhere to the same level of cult worship as Republicans do for Donald Trump. It's just not something you really see. I'm sorry that your wife has been programmed. Consider her dead, she's not the same. I lost my own father this way. Everything is political. Even as evidence crushes the conspiracies he's sold, he's still 100% indoctrinated into the cult. He's gone. Your wife is gone. My stepsister stole my fiance and taunted me with postcards. Now they're broke and begging for a job at our family business. I, 28F, was engaged to my college boyfriend about 4 years ago. We had been together throughout college and got engaged at 23. A week before our wedding, he ran off with my stepsister. My ex-fiance Greg, 28M, and my stepsister Melissa, 28F, eloped just before our big day, leaving only a letter behind. In the letter, Greg admitted to starting an affair with Melissa a few months after our engagement. He said he realized he couldn't marry me because it would be unfair to all of us, as he and Melissa were the ones truly in love. He believed the universe used me to bring him to his true love, and marrying me would deny us all a happy future. And that was it. They left, and I didn't see them again until recently. Greg's parents were so embarrassed by his actions that they covered all the wedding costs, so I didn't have to pay anything. That was the last time I interacted with his family. My own family was beyond embarrassed, they were furious. My father even considered hiring a private detective to track them down and bring them back for answers. Just to let you know, my father is actually my stepdad, but he has been my father ever since I was very young, and I have always called him dad because he is the only father I've ever known. My biological dad left shortly after I was born, and my mom never saw him again since he gave up his parental rights, and they were never married. My mom married my dad when I was 8. Melissa and I went to the same school, which is how our parents met. For some reason, Melissa took a dislike to me and treated me terribly for years. She was a true bully, constantly picking on me at school with her friends. The torment didn't stop at home. She would find ways to make me feel bad there too. Despite my complaints, our parents' attempts to discipline her weren't effective and she wasn't afraid of them, so she continued her bullying. My school years were a nightmare because of her and her friends. Much like my dad was absent, Melissa's mom wasn't around either, as she had passed away a few years after Melissa was born. Her mother died in the middle of the night from an epileptic episode, so whenever my mom tried to discipline her, Melissa would retort that she had no right because she wasn't her real mom. My father attempted to stop her bullying, but it was futile as she was fearless. They tried everything from scolding to gentle talks, but nothing curbed her behavior. Occasionally, they threatened to send her away, but she would boldly challenge them, knowing they were empty threats. In middle school, she was already troublesome, But by high school, her behavior worsened significantly. She picked up bad habits, becoming almost a juvenile delinquent. She started smoking and sneaking out to drink with her equally problematic friends. The turning point came when she was arrested with her friends one night for breaking into a house while drunk. This incident finally pushed our parents to take action. After weeks of pleading and protesting, they managed to send her to a rehabilitation center for troubled teens. Though she was unhappy, my father was adamant, insisting that if she wanted to stay with us and be part of the family, she had to improve. He couldn't allow her behavior to continue and disrupt everyone else as she was becoming a menace to society. Melissa left during our sophomore year and didn't return until after we had graduated. She enrolled in a school near the rehab center and stayed with her aunt. I didn't see her during those years because I had no interest in how my biggest bully was doing. My parents visited her every weekend and always asked if I wanted to join, but I always said no. Her friends ignored me after she left, which greatly improved my high school experience as I no longer had anyone constantly bullying me. Melissa continued her education in rehab and, when she returned, the first thing she did was apologize for everything she had put me through. She seemed much calmer, and I thought she had genuinely changed, so I forgave her. We were both heading off to college in a few months anyway, so it didn't seem to matter much. Once college started, we both moved out and only came back home for the holidays. During those times, she was much nicer to me. Not in the sense of being friendly, but she simply ignored me instead of constantly picking on me as she used to. I had no reason to suspect anything even after getting engaged. They both acted as if nothing was happening. I never thought Greg might have feelings for Melissa. It never crossed my mind because Greg convincingly acted like he was in love with me, all while cheating on me with Melissa. She also pretended to be my friend, so I didn't find out the truth until it was too late and they had already left. My parents wanted to track them down and bring them back, but I convinced them to let it go because I just wanted to forget everything. It was already devastating that Greg and Melissa made a fool of me by running off a week before my wedding. I couldn't handle any more drama. I was deeply depressed and emotionally drained. For weeks, I buried myself in work and sleep to avoid confronting my heartbreak. My heart was shattered and I felt numb, but worse was yet to come. A couple of weeks after the day that should have been my wedding, I received a postcard from Melissa. She was in California, and included a bunch of photos of her and Greg looking incredibly happy. It was clear she was rubbing it in my face. She mentioned being sorry about the surprise before my wedding, but it was obvious she wasn't truly sorry. She just wanted to hurt me. That's when I realized she had never forgiven me for what happened years ago and blamed me for being sent away. She never wanted to be my friend. She used me to get to Greg. I had trusted her and ended up being a stepping stone in her malicious plan. I have to admit, for days after receiving that postcard, I couldn't sleep because I was losing my mind over it. It was a traumatic experience, and I needed months of therapy to heal and address my trust issues. The postcard wasn't a one-time thing. She sent me pictures of her and Greg for months. It only stopped after about a year because I never responded or engaged with her drama. Our parents were furious and cut all ties with her after the first postcard. They never reached out to her again, which was a significant loss for Melissa because she was poised to inherit her dad's business. She was a business major, partly because she wanted to join our father's company. However, after her betrayal, our father severed all ties with her and offered me the opportunity to work with him instead, feeling he needed to make amends in a significant way. Unlike her, I had a degree in history, which had nothing to do with business. Therefore, I needed to learn the ropes from scratch. My father assured me this wasn't an issue and was eager to teach me everything he knew so I could eventually take over the business. I agreed and started working under him to learn how to run the business, allowing him to retire and hand over the reins to me. After a few years of hard work, I was promoted last year, and my father retired. It was a fantastic feeling, having started from the bottom and learned everything I needed to know. Now, the business runs smoothly under my management, and my parents can enjoy their time together without worrying about it, thanks to my efforts. For a long time, I immersed myself in my work, which helped me move on from Greg. The combination of work and therapy allowed me to heal, and I no longer think about Greg or what he did. I never expected to hear from them again, let alone have them ask for my help. It would take a lot of nerve and a serious lack of common sense to ask for my help after betraying me, humiliating me and flaunting it. Yet Melissa and Greg must indeed lack sense, because that's exactly what they did a few days ago. It was the weekend, and around lunchtime, my doorbell rang frantically. Thinking it was the pizza I ordered, I didn't think much of it. To my shock, when I opened the door, instead of the delivery guy, there stood Melissa, looking extremely worried. Speechless, I waited for her to speak. It was clear she was there to ask for help. She looked destitute and her appearance betrayed her situation. Melissa, always impeccably dressed, now wore old faded clothes that looked long out of date. Her jeans were too short, and she appeared malnourished. I had already decided that whatever she asked, my answer would be no. She explained that she and Greg had been struggling ever since he lost his job a few months ago. Instead of job hunting, he had taken to drinking. Although she had been trying to find a job, her efforts were unsuccessful because she had left the workforce to handle household chores when she moved away with Greg. This gap in her resume made her a less attractive candidate for the job she applied for. She had heard from relatives that our father had retired and handed the business over to me, so she came to ask if I would hire Greg. Melissa admitted she hadn't approached our parents yet and came straight to me because she believed I had a kind heart and felt immense guilt over her past betrayal, confident I wouldn't turn her away. Now that she needed my help, her entitlement was so absurd that I laughed in her face and told her to apply elsewhere because I don't hire cheaters. Then I shut the door on her and walked back to the living room, ready to call the cops if she didn't leave soon. Fortunately, she left that day, but she hasn't stopped bothering me. After her visit, I called our parents to tell them about it. They said they'd heard from neighbors that Melissa was back in town without Greg but hadn't mentioned it. In our small town, news travels fast, so we quickly found out that Melissa had been in town for about a week, staying with an old high school friend. It was likely this friend who told her where I lived and that I had inherited the business she thought should have been hers. She was now really playing that card. A few days after visiting me, she went to our parents to complain about how heartless I was. She expected them to side with her, thinking she had the upper hand by playing the victim, but she was wrong. My father told her that the business was mine to run and I could make my own decisions. He wasn't going to interfere. My mother reminded her that she had betrayed me by running away with my fiance after pretending to be my friend for years, so she deserved whatever was happening to her. Melissa had lost the right to ask any of us for help, especially after sending me postcards to torment me. She tried to defend herself, saying it was all in the past and she was a different person now, but my parents told her to leave, wanting nothing to do with her anymore. She threw a tantrum, accusing them of always favoring me and treating me like the golden child while ignoring her. My father responded that he had made more allowances for her behavior than any other parent would, but she insisted it still didn't matter. I had everything she was supposed to have, including the business I was flaunting. She claimed it wasn't her fault that Greg fell for her and chose her over me, yet she felt she was being punished for it. She said the postcards she sent were sincere apologies, not attempts to torment me. Honestly, I haven't stopped thinking about her words since my father told me. It's true she was supposed to inherit the business and be in my position, but she lost that because of her own actions, not mine. I never asked my father to cut her out and give me the business, he did that on his own. It seems unfair for her to blame me. She also accused me of being the golden child, which isn't true, but I can see why she thinks that. She believes she was sent away because I complained about her bullying. It's a big deal for a parent to decide to send their child away, and I know it was hard on my father. But again, that's not my fault. If he hadn't intervened, Melissa might have ended up in even more trouble because of the path she was on. I also doubt her claim about the postcards being genuine apologies. She was probably just trying to cover up her intentions. I feel sorry for her because her husband turned out to be completely useless, and now she has to bail him out. She even came to me for help, which must have been incredibly hard for her. I regret how I treated her before. I have everything now, and she has nothing, so I can't help but pity her. That's just who I am. Besides, it's been a long time, and I'm tired of holding on to this grudge. But I also don't want to help her. I can offer my sympathy, but I don't want to hire them or give them money. I think it's enough that I even feel bad for her after everything she put me through, which most people wouldn't do. The only reason I feel bad for her now is that this business was supposed to be hers. Now that I'm in a position of power, I'm finally getting back at her. And it feels wrong. Maybe it's because of what she said about me being the golden child, or maybe it's just imposter syndrome, but I feel weird about this. So am I the for refusing to hire my ex-fiance, who eloped with my stepsister, now that they're struggling with money and need help? Update. I was at a loss and the comments here only made things more confusing. Some of you thought I was right to turn them away, while others claimed I was always the favored child, causing Melissa to act out. This wasn't as helpful as I hoped. I decided to talk to my parents, as I've always sought their advice when facing problems. They assured me I had no reason to feel sorry for Melissa. They said everyone had gone above and beyond to help her become a better person, but if she wasn't willing to change, there was little we could do. My father mentioned he had intended to let her take over the business if she had behaved and been a good daughter, but she failed and embarrassed the family. Given that, she couldn't expect to take over or even be part of the family anymore. Talking to my parents made me feel much better. So, I'll try not to feel guilty about things I haven't done anymore. Update. About a week had passed since Melissa had shown up at my door and visited my parents. We hadn't heard from her, and I almost thought she had gone back to Greg until today when she appeared at my workplace and caused a scene. It was terrible because she just walked in, knowing the place well from childhood, and easily bypassed security. She stood in front of my office, shouting that I had stolen the business from her by pretending to be a perfect daughter to our parents and constantly sucking up to them to gain their approval. She accused me of falsely claiming she had bullied me throughout our childhood and convincing our father to send her to rehab just to solidify my position as the favored child. She declared that the business was supposed to be hers, but I was refusing to let her be a part of it because I was jealous Greg had chosen her over me, unlike our parents who had always favored me. She said I had lost my mind from being overlooked and had turned our parents against her. When I heard the commotion, I called security and went to see what was happening. I tried to tell her to shut up, but she continued for a few more minutes until security finally threw her out of the building. I called my dad before contacting the police to get his opinion, and he was furious. He told me to go ahead and call the cops. Luckily, when the police arrived, she was still lurking nearby, likely waiting for me to leave so she could confront me again or maybe even physically attack me. The police took her away and charged her with trespassing and disturbing the peace. They are minor charges, and she might get off with a fine or community service at worst, but it will go on her record, which is never good. I informed my dad about the charges and arrest, expecting him to be upset, but he just seemed exasperated and said he was tired of dealing with her craziness. I feel bad for him because it must be hard having a daughter like Melissa and being blamed for everything that goes wrong in her life, even though it's usually her own fault. Honestly, we have all been really patient. Update. So I think Melissa has gone back to California because we haven't heard from her in a few days, which is unusual since we expected her to lash out after her arrest. My dad asked around and found out that some people saw her heading towards the airport recently, so it seems she's left. Honestly, it's a huge relief that she's gone because I was really worried she might do something drastic to get our attention, which is never good. I have no idea what she plans to do about the situation with Greg now, as it seems unlikely she'll get help from anyone after this. I just hope she finds something to do and gets out of this mess, not out of kindness or compassion, but because if she doesn't, she'll just come back here with Greg and bother us again, and I don't want that. So I genuinely hope and pray that either she or Greg finds a job and can support themselves. For now at least, I won't have to hear from her for a couple of weeks, and I believe this nightmare is finally over.
Would I be the asshole if I ignored my cousin's advice and confronted my parents about discovering through a DNA test that I was adopted and they never told me? Original post, April 22, 2024. Hello everyone. This is a long story, but I'm going to try and condense it as much as possible. About 9 weeks ago, my maternal cousin and I both completed an ancestry or DNA test through one of the popular brands. My parents are very against these DNA tests because they do not like the idea of giving your DNA to these companies and have forbidden me from doing them in the past when I brought up the idea. However, I now know the real reason they were against me doing it. My cousin, James, got his results first and matched with many people sharing my mother's maiden name, as well as other names known within my mother's family line. I got my results about a week later and not only did I not match with my cousin, but I also did not match with any of my cousin's matches, nor did anyone share my mother's maiden name. My father and I have an extremely common surname in my country, think Smith, and I did match with a few people who shared that name, but none were close matches, with 3rd the cousins being the closest. So I'm just assuming it was because it is a common surname. James's family knows he has done the DNA test and he has shared the results. However, I have asked him to keep what he knows about mine between us for a while. I learned this about 2 weeks ago and have since come to the conclusion that I'm adopted. At first, this made me feel really upset, and I thought maybe the DNA tests were faulty, but after researching, no, I do not think they are. I think I'm just adopted. I have 2 younger brothers who are 11 and 9 who are not adopted because I remember my mother being pregnant with them. So, I cannot understand why I was adopted. I want to let my parents know that I know about being adopted. I want to in some ways, confront them and ask why they have lied to me for so long. But I also want to say I still consider them my only family. James thinks it is a really bad idea. He says I should just keep it to myself because if I tell my parents I know I'm adopted, It could have negative consequences on my relationship with my parents and also could get him into trouble with his parents because he bought me the DNA test and he is very close to my parents. I have said I will just tell them I bought the test myself, but he says they will know because he got his test so recently. Would I be the asshole if I ignored my cousin and confronted my parents about me being adopted anyway? Verdict: not the asshole. Relevant comments. First comment. I cannot imagine what you must be going through, realizing that you may well be adopted through a DNA test. How old are you, OP? I think you would not be the asshole for asking your parents about this. I do not support confronting them, but it would not be wrong to ask questions of your parents. This is likely to come out of the blue for them, so consider that. I would encourage you to find a way to ask your parents from a place of curiosity, which might be less threatening to them than confronting them. Although I cannot imagine how, it is possible there is a lot more to this story than you being adopted and never told. So assuming you want to maintain a relationship with the only people you have known as parents all your life, start a conversation. You do not need to involve your cousin in this, but his role, if it is discovered, will pale in comparison to the real issues if you're adopted and only just found out this way. OP, I am 18, but I still live with my parents part-time and I live at university halls the other time. Some parts of me want to confront them about it because I feel like they have lied to me. But I also know it is a bad idea and I'm not sure I would be able to control my emotions if I confront them about it because I feel almost betrayed by them. I do want to maintain a relationship with them, but I feel hurt that they have lied to me for so long. I still love them as my parents and only family. It is hard to explain what I feel, but I have kept it to myself for 2 weeks because I knew at that time I would have exploded at my parents. But I cannot keep it to myself any longer and my emotions are less intense now. Second comment. Do you have any connections on your father's side? One of the theories that come to my mind is that your mom might have been abused or cheated and your dad might not know or knew but still loved you even then. OP. It is possible that I have connections on my father's side. There are very distant relatives who share our last name, but my last name is extremely common in our country and area, so I think that is probably why. OP on his feelings regarding his parents not telling him about being adopted earlier. OP. The fact that they have hidden it hurts me more than just being adopted, if that is truly the case. They have hidden it, which makes it feel like a dirty secret. It makes me think that, in some ways, they consider adoption as less than real family. People are commenting, saying they did not tell you because they did not want you to feel less than family. But them not telling me shows me that they think adoption equals less than real family. I am 18 years old and I found out I'm adopted through one of those at-home DNA kits. I have matched with my biological mother, who is 33 years old, but now I do not know what to do. Should I message her or just pretend that this never happened? What should I say? May 4th, 2024. And even more, I matched with a woman who is a 49.8% DNA match, predicted to be my parent or child. I looked at her profile and saw that she was born in 1991, meaning she would have been 15 or 16 years old when I was born. She has not been active on the app for over 6 months. I have written out messages to her to send and then deleted them. I have contemplated just saying hello, but have not had the courage to actually send it off. I could also just turn off matches and make my profile invisible, so she would not see me if she logged back in again. I could pretend she does not exist and that I never found this out. Knowing I have another mom out there that I know nothing about makes me feel so anxiously curious. My parents never told me I was adopted, and I feel utterly betrayed by them. I have resisted the urge to confront them about it since I got the results back from the first test, but now I know for certain and just want to smash my fists into a wall. I want to scream at them. I hate that they have kept this from me for my entire life. Now the only people who know that I know are my uncle and my cousin. I trust that they will not say anything to anyone until I have spoken to people about it. I feel so lost and confused. Should I message my biological mother or pretend she does not exist and turn my profile invisible from her? Too long, didn't read, discovered I'm adopted via a DNA kit. Matched with biological mother, unsure whether to message or ignore. Feeling betrayed by adoptive parents. Uncertain about confronting them. Feeling lost and conflicted. Relevant comments. OP on the possibility of his biological mother doing her own test in hoping he would reach out when he was of the legal age and sharing his profile with her OP. Yeah, I'm guessing that she did it with hopes that I would also do it one day. I mean, that makes sense. Otherwise you wouldn't have made your profile public. My biological mom would have also done the DNA test through this company. I don't know if she would have been notified or not, but I can turn off my profile. I've actually already done it because I want to know what I'm going to do before she sees my account and thinks this is an invitation to reach out to me. OP on if his adoptive parents were not able to have children when he was adopted and if he still resides at the family home with parents and siblings. OP, my parents aren't infertile because I have younger siblings and I remember my mom being pregnant with them. Yeah, I live mainly at uni halls. I'm not sure I could approach this in a level-headed way. I feel so hurt by them. I've been lied to my entire life. My whole self is not real. It's made me rethink everything. And I also feel guilty for being angry at them. I feel like such a mess. Update 1, May 8, 2024, 2 weeks later. Hello everyone. A lot has happened to me since my last post here, and before I start to explain, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who commented and replied to my original post. It was really helpful, and I truly appreciate it. For full context, please read the other posts on my profile, which discuss this situation further. First of all, I decided to turn my profile private and invisible. I did not want my biological mother to see that I had done a DNA test as an invitation to message me. I looked at her profile one last time, and it still said last online 6 months ago or something like that, so she obviously does not check the app regularly. I wrote down information about her, first and last name, birth year and past family names, in case, in the future, I lose access to the account or if I want to try to track her down and her account disappeared. Though I am hoping that if I do decide to have contact with her in the future, I will just be able to message her on the app. But just in case. I confronted my parents about what I had found out, and there was a lot of crying, especially from my mother, but also from me. I told them how hurt I was that they never told me and how much pain and anxiety it caused to find this out on my own and feel like I was unable to ask them about it. They apologized to me and explained that they wanted to tell me. They planned on doing it when I turned 8, but they couldn't go through with it because they didn't want to hurt me. They said every year they planned to tell me and every year they put it off. They told me they did it out of love for me but also out of anxiety that it would change our relationship for the worse. I explained to them that even if telling me I was adopted did hurt me as a child, I would have had them there to support me through it. And that now I had found out on my own and felt like I did not have anyone there to understand what I was going through. They took responsibility for not telling me and for the hurt it caused when I found out on my own. We hugged, cried, and forgive each other. Even though I do not agree with them not telling me, I can understand their feelings and why they found it so difficult when I was younger. After we had finished talking about it, they asked me what I wanted moving forward. They asked if I wanted to tell my brothers that I was adopted or just carry on like nothing happened. I said I no longer wanted it to be a secret and that I wanted them to tell my brothers what they should have told me. I did not want it to seem like a dirty secret, but simply a fact of who I am and where I came from. I want it to be something celebrated, not feared to be talked about. I was not born into this family, but this is my family. And I feel so blessed that I was given the opportunity to become part of this family. I asked what they knew about my biological mother, and they said not much. They know that she was in foster care when she fell pregnant with me and that she would have only been 14 or 15 years old at the time. She decided she did not want to keep me but did not want to have a termination, so I was put up for adoption, and she requested no contact with me. I hope that the situation around my birth was not traumatic for her. I know this is a weird thought, but I hope she just got pregnant with me from another person her own age and that I was not a product of any abuse. That makes me sad to think about. Sorry for the long post. Again, thank you all for the help and advice you gave me. I appreciate everything. Too long, didn't read, made profile private to avoid contact from biological mom. Confronted parents about adoption, led to tears and apologies. They planned to tell me but couldn't, agreed to tell brothers, no longer want adoption to be a secret. Grateful for my family. Biological mom was in foster care, gave me up for adoption on 14/15 and requested no contact. Hopeful for her well-being. Grateful for support and advice. Relevant comments. Commenter. Planning to reach out to his biological mother. OP. Yes, I am not sure I want contact with her just yet. However, I have kept her information in case I ever change my mind. I would not say I will ever rule it out completely, just not now, I do not think. Commenter. OP on what he learned about his biological side via the tests and if he is worried about how this might affect his biological mother. OP. I am a little afraid I will not have that impact on her. I worry that if I was born out of abuse, she will see me as a trauma product. I want to think she did the DNA test because she wants me to contact her, but I do not know. Like I said in my post, it is weird to hope that my biological father was a 14-year-old boy, but I really hope that my biological father was another 14-year-old who was in a consenting and non-abusive relationship with my biological mother. Commenter. OP on if he knew the reason why his parents chose to adopt him. OP. They said they thought my mother could not have children, but then after they adopted me and stopped trying, they had my brothers. They are 7 and 9 years younger than me, so quite a while after I was born. Update 2. July 14, 2024, 2 months later. Hi everyone, it's been a while since my last update and quite a lot has happened since then. I thought I would hop on and give a little update about my life now. Before anything, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who commented on my last posts and who helped me through such a hard time. It took me a while to process everything, but I decided to reach out to my biological mother. I finally felt ready. I sent her a message, keeping it simple by introducing myself and saying I think I'm her biological son. I made it clear that I had no expectations of a relationship if she didn't want one. I was simply reaching out to know more about my origins. To my surprise, she responded less than 10 minutes later. She told me she had been hoping I would reach out and was waiting for me to do so. She told me she had never stopped thinking of me. She was indeed very young when she had me, and she said that giving me up was the most difficult decision she's ever made. She thought it would provide me with a better life than she could have given me at the time. Hearing this from her was both heartbreaking and comforting. She seemed really regretful, but also glad that I reached out. We decided to meet in person a couple of weeks ago. It was an emotional experience for both of us. She brought photos of her when she was pregnant with me, and Jesus, she was 14 but she didn't look older than 11. They were hard to look at. I learned that I have 2 half-brothers. They're only 5 and 7. I have met them, and it's weird, they look like me when I was young. She said she had always hoped I had a good life and wondered what happened to me. I think that I'm still processing everything, even now. But since meeting her, I feel a sense of peace and closure that I haven't ever felt before. Additional information from OPOP. My biological father was a 13-year-old boy at the time. I haven't had any contact with him, and my biological mother doesn't know where he is. I would be interested in contacting him. Comments. First comment. This is a great update, OP. You sound like a wonderful and grounded person. This is so much upheaval, and it sounds like you're dealing with it well. I wish you all the best. Second comment. Heartwarming. Best of luck with it.
We couldn't save our 15-year marriage, because my wife friend-zoned me and wants a platonic companionship. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14. We absolutely adore and work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much, we essentially became roommates co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me, and that she only saw me as a best friend. That she only loved me in a very platonic way, And this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy and let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, "I don't know," and that, "I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do, or what is it about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. That she has been feeling disconnected for years, and that our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss, and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like at this point I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means with companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and/or sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in, or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which to my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc. And we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell or feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this only when I'm high or drunk sex, because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young and healthy individuals and good looking. We both have good standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. My wife of 15 plus years is no longer in love with me and doesn't know why, and now says she can only have sex while intoxicated, or I need to settle for a platonic sexless marriage, and she doesn't know why that is, but it is what it is, and I'm in need of insight or advice. Relevant comments, missing reasons. Commenters looked at his history and found they were swingers. We did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it, and we have established it's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapist and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say, I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging is something that is affecting her view on our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together, and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. Truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing things head on. No matter how painful. If this is a consequence of swinging, this issue existed long before the lifestyle. I agree that swinging wasn't a solution in the end. Never was meant to be. It was more of discovering or exploring if she felt any different. If that was the case, we agreed we would talk about it, and if we arrive at the conclusion that myself is the problem and she has no problem with other men, we would part ways amicably. However, this wasn't the case. She didn't like sex or intimacy there either. She was very much in control of that whole swinging situation. And yes, I went along with it. What gives? It felt very organic, and it was her effort, if you will, to discover more and learn more about our current issue. I saw it as a means of learning if I'm the problem and was very much ready to accept that. It turns out it wasn't the case. 6 years of misery sound awful. I would very much hate that. OP on if this started when the swinging ended. Finally, a comment on the swinging topic with actual insight. You're absolutely right about the fact that the swinging experience had changes that will impact our marriage and lives forever. For example, the best thing swinging taught us, even above sexual exploration, was the level of transparent and open communication it requires. We would literally have mental orgasms having dialogue with such intentionality. We implemented that in all our lives and areas, including parenting with our children. She even agrees that we're thankful for that takeaway from our swinging. Honestly, I cannot stress it enough with people here. Yes, we explored swinging. However, it was actually a positive experience. When we decided to stop, it was because it felt natural and organic to just do so. In fact, we met with that couple who we meshed super well with the night before. We actually enjoyed the actual friendship and even spent time as vanilla friends. So it wasn't because of something negative. Wife mentioned that it certainly wasn't any better, and since she's not enjoying the sex, we both agreed there's no point to this. I agreed and we moved on, and we're still friends with those people because it's great. All that said, I know, more often than not, swinging causes massive issues. However, this was something we explored in pursuit of a solution to an issue that was present way before. I think of it as taking a practical approach to trying to solve the problem. Update 1. I wanted to give you guys an update of how the therapy session with my wife went this week. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses, comments, suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally, mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and how having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies, 2 kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions directly, mostly from my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we did miss out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life. Especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes 2 to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate, that I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or sexual with me as of now, and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which for the 50th time said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much in existence when we tried this. We, both, really have no issue with this. We know it happened, we tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct and said that I will not be accepting this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimacy and sexual relationship. I expressed how I'm not going to be a convenience, and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, that divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still nothing was said and I walked out very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short and cold and transactional. The saddest part is realizing, this dynamic already is very cold and transactional. Here's where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her roommate co-parent dynamic without reproach and that it should be no mistake that I'm not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and started to basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things to which I declined and it really shocked her. She was upset saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night she was crying, telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been very hard to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and love on her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180 and let's just say, there has been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50ths and she lost her shit. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, hey, friends go in 50-50ths and as your friend I expect nothing less. This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain, because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realization that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic and I wish you all the best. TLDR. My wife friend-zoned me, wants to just co-parent at my expense, but I started the 180 method to try and find a solution because she doesn't want to work on us, which seems to be working on getting her out of her rut and helping me discover more about how she feels. Also, therapy is paramount and highly recommended to all couples. Relevant comments. Comment 1. So, I'm going to assume that your wife has a lucrative job and you are both going 50-50ths on childcare, as you both work and share children. Because otherwise, this approach is just plain financially abusive, and if you're planning on saying I won't pay the bills unless you have sex with me, sexually abusive as well. Assuming that is the case and you aren't a total POS, I'm actually interested in how this works out for you. I feel like I'm in an unstated, similar situation. We both work and have blended finances, but we don't go to bed together or eat together, have barely any intimacy, a kiss or two, hugs every couple days, and spend maybe 8 hours a week together, just the three of us, him, me, and the toddler. Even less, just the two of us, maybe 3 hours a week. Otherwise, he is on his game, or out playing sports, watching YouTube, or whatever else he does. It barely feels like a friend situation, let alone a marriage. I'm curious how she handles it, as the spouse that presumably was pulling away first. I hope you keep us updated. OP, yes, we both have degrees, good careers, and while I make significantly more money, her salary is very proficient and above average. The 50-50ths was not to cripple nor hurt her financially, that is cruel, but mostly to send a message on what a roommate dynamic looks like in the real world. I really dislike how people immediately jump to conclusions about the finances as a way of manipulating her. It's not the case at all. Plenty of money left over after bills. However, 50-50ths means she has less whatever money, and the understanding that roommates share everything equally. Prior to this 180 approach, we did everything together and with our kids. We always saw ourselves as a unit that does things together. Both alone and with the kids too. That's changed now, where I'm choosing to focus on more independent types of pastimes and focus. That is what has sparked her reaction and realization of there's more than just roommates here. Comment 2. How does one dump half of the household expenses on the other person if they share a bank account? Or are your finances kept separately? Just curious how this would work if applied to my life. OP, excellent question. We shared everything. The proposed 50-50ths was suggesting we place the necessary amount to pay bills in the same account and any leftover money can be deposited to a new account. I think this is why she was very upset. She felt a huge loss of control knowing she won't be able to monitor my finances. Also, she felt a huge loss in her leftover money with this arrangement and saw that I would keep significantly more of my own. This is still being worked out because I think she is calling my bluff here, but my plan is to notify her next week as I modify my direct deposit and open a new account. It will definitely be more real there. To be clear, for all the trolls here, yes, she will have less leftover money after responsibilities and it's still enough to live on. Example, for reference. Assume I make $3,000 a month, she makes $1,000 a month. Responsibilities are $1,000 a month. So she'd contribute $500 and I would contribute $500. Where before she would contribute only $250. This is the last comment I'll add regarding money and finances. She's fine and she's not hurting. I promise when asked what if she leaves for another man. Interesting. She has no shortage of men hitting on her and we're by no means jealous people. So I've witnessed this multiple times and her reactions are somewhat indifferent. I will say, if another man for her was the answer, she'd tell me or she'd have some inkling maybe. There's no telling, but I think the problem is deeper than superficial attention from a different person. You might be right, and if this is the case, so be it. However, I'll live with peace knowing I left no stone left unturned. Crazy thought, I know I would be disappointed and saddened if she did leave for another man that would accept the bare minimum. But I'd also feel a peace knowing it's not all my fault. I know I'm responsible in some way to some degree. That's just marriage. I know sadness and depression will creep but we'll both overcome, but if this does happen at least there will be clear reasons and clarity as to why it did. Also, I know for a fact that she wouldn't cheat. We're both very blunt, open and transparent. She would definitely tell me that she wants to step out on our marriage before it actually happens. As would I. We owe ourselves this respect for each other and we actively practice it. New update. I debated for a long time on whether to submit an update on this matter. A few significant changes have taken place and I felt it would be good to not only share with you, but also to allow myself to process all of this in a uniform way. We're now almost 9 weeks in on the 180 method I mentioned I was starting and it started to render some positive reactions from my wife. I explained in the previous post that she started to notice things that she previously took for granted, started to ask more about my whereabouts and also started to notice I would go out with the kids more often without her and she started to invite herself, to which I didn't decline. So much has changed and it has changed for what seems to be for the better. This past Memorial Day weekend, my wife asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee because she wanted to talk to me about something. This was huge, because I can't recall the last time my wife asked to talk to me about something important. I must admit, I was very nervous and worried about what this could be about, and my mind was racing with the plethora of scenarios of what it could possibly be. Of course I agreed, and we took some time away from the kids to have this conversation at a local coffee shop. The talk was very constructive in nature. There was a ton of insightful information about herself that helped me further understand where she is in life, both emotionally and mentally. We summarized what the core issues we are encountering are, and she asked me for help. This is new, and I cannot tell you how excited I was to hear something so sincere coming from my wife, who for the last 2+ years has been absent. So after she was through sharing all her thoughts, I proposed a plan that I felt was right for us. This is something that I had been thinking about these last few weeks, and I was planning on bringing this up in a few months if I noticed that things were not changing for the better. This date felt like the right place to share it, since it goes hand in hand with what she talked about, and it also relates to the help she was asking me for. I started by first acknowledging her feelings and her concerns. I told her they are valid, and how she feels is personal to her, and that I care that she feels this way because I don't like the thought of her being sad or depressed. I also told her that my goal still is and will always be for us to reconcile and be the happily ever after we vowed to be for each other, and that my love for her is as strong, if not stronger, as it was the day we said I do. I continued the conversation by telling her how I felt about the whole situation, read my previous posts for details, and how it affects me every day. I also clarified some things that she mentioned she was feeling because I have been very distant and monotone, transactional, lately. I explained to her that I was very much trying to protect my feelings and emotions from the rejection and neglect, and that it wasn't personal. It was simply me safeguarding myself because I cannot control her, I can only control myself. This was a perfect segue way to the core of this approach, which is focused on self-accountability. I told her that for the longest time I was always working hard to make her happy and do things that I knew she enjoyed or wanted. However, I was always met with rejection and disappointment, which caused a load of stress on me. I explained to her that I had to make a change for myself. After all, I can only control myself and make the changes that I want for myself. I mentioned how I was starting to implement new habits and routines that help edify me, all while still executing all of our shared responsibilities, including parenting, finances, and daily living activities. I explained that the goal is to continue to improve myself both as a husband and father, learn more, and be healthier, among other things. She was very receptive to this. She told me that she sees what I'm doing and that she is proud of the changes she has seen. She also told me how she's starting to realize that she feels left behind and that much of the things that have affected her negatively are her own fault. Toward the end of the conversation, which was about 3 hours, there was a very high spirit of reconciliation in the room. I told her that my goal is to ultimately make this work. However, I was very clear that I was not going to live under the current circumstances. I told her that my heart wants her to be happy even if it means elsewhere, and that I also deserve to be happy myself. I also explained that I do not want our children to grow up thinking this was okay or normal, because they deserve better as well. She told me she doesn't either. She told me she doesn't know what to do, to which I replied, let's set some clear goals. However, the goals will be for ourselves, not for each other. So here is what we established. We are in charge of our own happiness. The key here is that she's not responsible for making me happy, and vice versa. We both need to seek what that personal plan looks like individually. Also, we're both encouraged to include each other in taking those steps if we want, but it is not required. We are in control of our own individual lives and our own journey. This means we're both responsible for finding the resources necessary to grow, change, and heal. We can definitely help one another when help is requested. However, unsolicited advice or help will not be rendered. We are responsible for communicating. This ensures nothing is left unsaid. If it was never brought up or discussed, it never happened. We're not mind readers, and we need to take ownership when we fail to communicate. Make a list of needs and wants. This gives us both clear directions about meeting each other's needs. This also gives us a choice as to what we choose to do, compromise on, or decline to do. This list also will not serve as a checklist for accountability. We made it clear we would not be bringing this list up for the purpose of arguing. And it was up to the other person to use the list as a tool for growth, transparency, or clarification. We concluded that it was up to us to decide if we will be happy doing these things for ourselves because we care, not to simply check a box. This was very important in order to establish long-term habits and not short-term band-aids, because you cannot make someone change or do something they don't believe is important. Established a deadline, Memorial Day 2025. At the end of the conversation, we concluded by setting Memorial Day 2025 as a hard stop to evaluate our lives and our progress. We agreed we would do this with the clear understanding that we will independently decide if we are happy here. If we determine we aren't happy, we will be getting a divorce. We would also both assume full responsibility for what happened should we get divorced. For example, if needs were not met, it would mean my partner chose not to meet them. This places full responsibility on each other in all areas. The whole process requires that if needs were not met, the next question should be, did we do everything to address this issue? If yes, then we will have a clear conscience of what transpired and know we left no stone unturned. If, however, we didn't do everything to address the issue, it will mean the issue was not important enough for you or didn't care to meet those needs. This goes both ways in all areas, like everything else. We established that the main motivator for change should be ourselves, and that if we did that, we would in turn begin to see beneficial changes towards each other. The goal is to ensure that everything we are doing for one another to meet each other's needs is being done because we want to do it for our spouse, not because she asked. Instead, it was done because I know it makes him/her happy and I love seeing them happy. I felt it was important to mention to her that we are no longer required to do anything for each other. It is now more of a I want to do these things for each other. Ultimately, I felt the conversation was very positive and productive. Many tears were shed and lots of hugging ensued. I know this doesn't mean or guarantee anything, however, this has never happened before and I can honestly attribute it to the 180 method. I cannot give any more insight on this method other than it's the only thing I did differently and something new happened for what seems to be better. I've decided I will conclude and will refrain from this method moving forward as the plan now has changed. I'm planning to devote myself entirely to not only myself and my growth but to also work on her needs and wants because I want her to be happy by my side. She said and agreed she would do the same for herself. We agreed we would help and build each other wherever we request for it and that we will be approaching this as a team. As of today, some of the biggest changes I have noticed are her commitment to therapy and mental health. She is taking some antidepressants that are helping her. She is also more confident and in a far better mood more frequently. We have started to explore more ways of intimacy in multiple areas such as physical touch and words of affirmation. Sex is starting to make an appearance, which is exciting. Side note, sex was very awkward to start when you've been abstinent for so long. We've also started to work out together, which is great, and have lost weight, which is also very exciting. Overall, communication has improved, and I cannot wait to see where this leads. I hope this helps someone out there. I'm still very much interested in your feedback and thoughts on this. You all have been a huge help in giving me hope and insight into this tough journey. Trolls aside, many of you have really been instrumental in my journey both emotionally and mentally. I will not be providing any more updates until Memorial Day next year. I think it's now time to keep focusing on myself and start working on all the new opportunities that hopefully will arise with my wife. I wish you all the best in life and your relationships with those you love. TLDR, our marriage took a turn for the better after the 180 method and we're now working on ourselves, each other, and rekindling our marriage. We also set a deadline for next year to either remain together or get divorced. I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. I faced discrimination my entire life because of my golden child sister, and she even tried to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Finally, I got my revenge. My parents always favored my sister, and it was far from subtle. If she accused me of something, they'd believe her and punish me. But if I accused her, even with undeniable proof, they'd give her a lighter punishment and find a way to scold me too. My birthday cake always had to be her favorite flavor, and my parents pretend they didn't know I hated it. They always bought her more than me and took us where she wanted, even if it was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up spoiled and used me as a punching bag. At first, she mostly ignored me, but things got worse when we were teens. She ended up with no friends, and her behavior deteriorated. Did her friends move away or ditch her because she was mean? I don't know, because we were never close. My parents boasted about her achievements but never mentioned any issues, whereas they constantly highlighted my flaws as teasing material. I only knew she had no friends because we went to the same school, and I noticed she was no longer with people. Meanwhile, I was fairly popular. My sister realized this and suddenly turned me from an occasional punching bag to someone she needed to take down constantly. She started accusing me and my friends of more things. My parents stopped letting me hang out with anyone, with excuses like, "They're not good people according to your sister," or, "Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time?" What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I got along well with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me to something. I don't remember what, and I sadly replied that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my kid self bluntly said it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. This got back to the adults, who apparently tore my parents apart later. I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, but after that, they gave me some leeway, so it was worth it. My sister changed schools. I guess the humiliation of our extended family knowing her social status was too much, so she demanded to switch, and my parents immediately obliged. Even though it cost them more since the school was further away, she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to mostly ignoring me. Having felt the power to mess with me and being angry that I told the family she had no friends, she never let me go. My life remained difficult. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents called light teasing. I never invited friends over because my parents were awful hosts, or my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents would believe her. I did become close to my cousins though, as my parents never dared to treat family that way. Then I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point we were separated and he came to find me to tell me my sister was flirting with him. She came over in skimpy clothing, batting her eyelashes, and started telling him how bad I was and how good she was. He was irked and ran off to find me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused since she couldn't do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? My boyfriend wasn't perfect, but I immediately believed him for a mean reason. Remember, I was a teen suffering from unfair treatment. I was very resentful and moody and hated my sister as much as she hated me. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about looks. I hadn't mentioned them yet because they weren't relevant. My parents were overweight and liked showing love via food, giving more food, buying treats, etc. My sister was also overweight, whereas I was not. I've always been kind of skinny because punishment often included no treats or snacks. Obviously, weight isn't what matters, personality is. But my sister, even then, was already rude and spoiled. Even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learned to work for anything since she could demand, and my parents would deliver. Added to that, the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model, even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep going in secret, but it was hard, and the relationship ended. I did get another boyfriend, but again, my sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again, my parents believed her. I tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't handle the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called a slut in high school as I was fine with making out with boys and such but refused to have relationships. Thankfully, it never got back to my sister or parents. My sister did bring one boyfriend home during all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and find myself someone like that. Until he stopped showing up and suddenly he was a conniving bastard that tricked my sister. Oh well, and the unequal treatment continued. At this time, she had more spending money, and her curfews were much better than mine. She was free to go anywhere at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it's because she's older, but when I reached that age, I still didn't have the same treatment she had, and when I pointed it out, they denied they ever said that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, using my sister's accusations against my boyfriends and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by, and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into a college, not a very well-regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because only her achievements were told to me, I don't know which colleges she even tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because whenever she got a B, we would celebrate. I would usually get good grades, but my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got those, what was there to celebrate? My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend and somehow stuff kept missing from my room, or some other issue she'd think of to make my life miserable. My curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me that since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and rent. I pointed out that I could get student loans. Mom said yes, except no, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment that they would decide if a college was worth my getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades were anymore and never believed in my capabilities anyway. I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said okay. My mom clearly didn't expect that and kept prying. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse to never pay for my college, but I said nothing except that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotional. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never believed they would eventually pay if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely go out, my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study. And study I did because I saw college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came, and I worked my ass off and got a scholarship. Not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me via my parents, I put my achievement on social media at the same time I told them, even forcing myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going as they'd have to explain to the family why not. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasted about it, and then I guess my sister got to them and they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy but couldn't do anything. College was my savior. I started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided introducing any man to them, and my sister stopped going to college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. She moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom, obviously thanks to my mom pulling strings. This was all presented to me as a point of pride. Almost there, I promise. I met my husband around this time. You know those people who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type who actually does. I'm the type who is meek and a doormat in any situation and then can't sleep at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something witty to say, etc. I'm the person who can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy who claps back immediately. He loves drama and loves to resolve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight, you better start worrying because he won't forgive and forget, he's just doing something worse for revenge. He's the one who wanted me to post here and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too, but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were baffled that I got together with him, but just because I was incapable of acting like him due to my upbringing, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget as we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. At this point, my parents naturally demanded to meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I had canceled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was stoked thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. So off he went alone and excited to meet them, and came back later euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful things they wanted, babe, we can screw them over so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he smartly told me it was better to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding first, in a wedding dress. Their excuse was that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister at least had the experience of it, at my venue, with pictures being taken, in the dress, and she'd even have a cake later. My husband will now type his part. Hey, vengeful husband here. Hell hath no fury like a pro-revenge instant karma nuclear revenge lurker when his beloved is scorned. That said, as much as my wife, she's my wife now, paints me as this quick-witted dude, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those folks legit suggested that crap like some sort of great gift. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, me thinks. Alas, after my brain rebooted, I did have a whole list of insults ready to spew out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these idiots along. So I said I needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiance, would react, and then ran out of there before I could give away my nefarious plans. Back to me, the wife. So my husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face and the recording to prove it. I was shocked. The distance had softened how badly they treated me, and I thought even they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband insisting on the angle of revenge helped me not go to a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible. We then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, the level-headed brother scolded us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us to avoid retaliation, he at least showed us that something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at risk of getting us sued, so we eventually settled for the most benign plan: act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest is mostly my husband's doing, but he wants me to do the honors. So here goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me, and they were our mutual ideas. He went back to my parents, said he probed and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to help them do it. He pointed out that I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised with it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big thing, so who knew if I'd lash out? Thus, he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they gave. He said my parents looked shocked, and my grown sister literally started skipping with joy like a kid, so it was accepted. Importantly, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment and past boyfriends, these words were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of this plan was ever put in writing. For any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk. And so began the months of deception where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me, while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they lay low. Of course, my parents wanted input in everything, including some things that meant a lot to me, like the songs and color palette. My husband would convince them to let it go to keep me in line, but since we never really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game. Or so they thought. Here's what we did. We'd go to check the drink and menu options and then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to try it out and then sigh and say, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options." Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry and they'd pay for the most expensive option. The same was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted and then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. When it came to the wedding dress, we hit a minor snag. My parents wanted me to use a hideous dress. Okay, it wasn't outright hideous, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look good on me. We had planned on saying yes and then simply not using it, but my mom sent me a message about it, so there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing to text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they kept communications outside any text. We made sure that happened by having me reply to my sister when she tried messaging my husband. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous person is extremely funny to me, and I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humor. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, But he acted conflicted to really sell that he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge, but he never told them we hired security. It was really funny. My husband and I, who had sincerely considered a courthouse wedding to focus costs on our honeymoon, ended up having this extravagant, expensive wedding and barely spent a dime. We called it back to pay for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, was enjoying the whole trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't think it was possible to witness a guy beaming at the thought of wasting his whole Saturday doing a car trip to discuss wedding details with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon the day came. The plan my parents, sister and husband had come up with was to wait until everyone was seated since the bride always comes out late. They'd have my sister arrive at that precise time to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she'd walk down the aisle. By the time I heard what happened, it would be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we saved some of the leftover fabric from my dress alterations. My husband took that to my parents' place, my sister still lives with them, and showed them as proof he'd ruined the dress, then said he had to go back to me as I was raging and he needed to calm me down. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our real security hidden initially. As the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents had settled in did we bring out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We instructed him not to let my sister in and promised a generous tip if he kept our instructions confidential. Soon, the moment arrived. My parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad signaled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids had been prepped to follow his lead, so they did without checking with me. After they all took their places, my dad stood at the entrance, waiting for me. During this, a friend not in the wedding party texted me to get ready, to avoid suspicion if my husband or bridesmaids started texting. This friend, my husband's ally, was as eager to stir drama as he was and didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song began. The doors opened and I entered. My dad was shocked to see me. He tried to look behind me but couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID, and it was her. He left me with a mumbled, "Something came up." Gasps and confusion filled the room. The friend on the plan loudly asked what happened. I lied and said tearfully, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there." My husband and I had agreed that if my dad abandoned me, I should say that to make him look as bad as possible. The tears weren't just acting. I was genuinely hurt and trying not to cry. The friend then loudly asked, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that everyone could hear and spread it. Then she said, "I will go and check," and ran off. We planned this so she could create chaos with the security and prevent my dad from returning to stop the ceremony. Eventually, my mom also left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been forewarned he might need to. His desperate run to me made me smile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what had happened. Some left to check as well. When I reached my husband, all was well. He comforted me, joking that my sad face was so real I deserved an Oscar and reassured me he'd deal with my parents for what they did. We got married without any further issues. My parents didn't come back. I noticed a lot of people leaving and returning during the party, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Someone whispered in my husband's ear and he went out. He returned later with a thunderous expression but whispered to me that he needed to go hide before he broke character and started smiling. It worked. Here's the summary from friends, family, the security guy and my husband that I got afterwards. My sister arrived in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her in as we had agreed. He told her she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride. Yes, we tipped him very well as promised. My dad tried threatening him with the police, claiming he'd never heard of him, so he couldn't be working there. The security agreed to call the police since he was hired by us and was just doing his job. My dad realized it would be too late and tried to demand that he let my sister in. At this point, the friend came over, started shouting and insulting my sister, and asking what was going on, basically stalling. My mom soon arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now was damage control, as everyone who learned about it was horrified they'd try to pull it off. People started screaming and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and blamed my husband. When he was called over, my husband put on his best confused look and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss, LOL." He denied ever agreeing to such a ridiculous plan. When they insisted he demanded proof, and of course, they couldn't provide any. All the text exchanges they could show were about normal wedding decisions. My sister was scream-crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a child. My dad looked like he wanted to hit my husband, but security and other people held him back. Naturally, they claimed they had no proof because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he repeated, "Why would I ever agree to something so messed up?" He ripped into them about being terrible parents and said he wasn't going to let their stupid plans and lies ruin his wedding, then went back to me. No one believed them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the recording as it was only for security purposes. However, some people filmed parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get torn apart by everyone who came out to see the drama was delightful. After years of being accused of things and not being believed, seeing them get a taste of their own medicine was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my dad kept changing from purple to white, and my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why he would agree, why there was no proof, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no good answers. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Again, people said nothing to me all night. I guess they wanted to spare me, and maybe it's because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did feel like everyone was making an extra effort to be nice, positive, and excited about everything. My husband says all the expensive food and drinks they were eating certainly helped, LOL. We had a blast. My husband kept up the forced angry face for only a short while before breaking out in smiles again. After that, we went to the hotel to catch some sleep before heading off on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents did try to pay for our plane tickets, but we thought that was risky as they could try to cancel them or something, so we refused. Since then the three of them have tried to contact me. I've refused calls because my husband insisted on keeping a paper trail, a smart move because my sister eventually messaged me. I won't repeat what she said as it was very unhinged and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation. Called my husband a two-faced snake who fooled them for months, he wants to print and hang that on our wall, LOL, and hoped, but was also certain, that I'd get cheated on by him. She even suggested he was cheating on me with her. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, my sister's messages and some messages from my parents demanding I pick up the phone, and sent it all to our family group chat. He also sent screenshots of messages to him where they called him names and threatened him, but he kept up the "you're delusional, I never agreed to anything" shtick and even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote a message in the group chat begging my family for help as I was now being harassed by them constantly. He pleaded with them to stop my parents and sister from ruining our honeymoon after they failed to ruin our wedding. He ended with a request that they not share our locations to prevent my parents from sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite, LOL. My family assured him they'd handle it, and since then, we've had peace. My husband is a bit disappointed that my sister didn't disobey so he could call her out again while tearing her a new one. We'll see if the peace lasts. All in all, while I would have preferred a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life they not only failed to ruin something meaningful to me, but I got back at them. Extra info: do I know why they treat me like this? I've been asked this question a lot, so I assume you all will wonder the same. I've pondered this all my life and still don't know. I tried asking when I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations I think it's this. I was unplanned. They took a while to have my sister, so she was not only wanted but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our small age difference, I think they didn't expect to have another child so soon or easily and didn't use adequate protection after my sister's birth. Maybe they didn't realize my mom was pregnant until it was too late, so they were saddled with an unplanned baby while still dealing with a newborn. They're not well off, so having the extra expense likely didn't help, and they resented me. But that's just my conjecture. Regardless, I've accepted that the reason won't truly matter. What they did to me was unwarranted, no matter what. Did they really think this would work? My husband and I have a theory that they never intended to do this at all. We think my sister threw a tantrum over me getting married first when she barely gets dates, and they made my husband that outlandish proposition. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd accept or that it would even look good for them to do it. By suggesting it and being refused, they could look like the good guys to my sister while having an excuse not to give me a dime. But then my husband accepted it and they couldn't backtrack without risking my sister turning on them.